News that my legitimate elder sister had fled her wedding reached the Shen residence 7 days before the ceremony. That day, I was sitting beneath a locust tree in a remote corner of the courtyard, embroidering a handkerchief. My maid, Queer, stumbled in with a face drained of color, so flustered she could barely get the words out. "Second young lady, eldest young lady, she's gone!" The needle in my hand paused for an instant. Then I lowered it steadily and continued stitching the half-open magnolia. "I understand." Queer stamped her foot in panic. "Second young lady, how can you not be worried at all? The whole capital is talking about it. They say General Xiao was badly injured at the frontier, and an imperial physician declared that he would never be able to father children. Eldest young lady must have heard the news and run away during the night." Of course I was not in a hurry. Being anxious would change nothing. Sure enough, less than half an hour later, the senior maid serving my father's principal wife, Madame Wang, came to summon me. She said Madame wished to speak to me in the main courtyard, though there was not a trace of courtesy in her tone. I put down my embroidery frame, straightened the somewhat worn outer robe I was wearing, and followed her. Madame Wang sat on a wooden daybed, turning a string of prayer beads in her hand. Her expression was so dark it seemed ready to drip water. My father, Lord Shen, sat nearby with his head lowered, saying nothing. Yunning. It was rare for Madame Wang to call me by my name instead of simply saying, "That girl. You must already have heard what happened at home." I lowered my head slightly. "Yes, your useless sister has done something utterly disgraceful. The Shen family's reputation has been thrown away because of her." Madame Wang ground out the words as the prayer beads spun quickly between her fingers. "But the wedding date has already been fixed, and the Xiao family is pressing for the marriage to go ahead. If we break the engagement now, how is the Shen family supposed to hold its head up in the capital?" She stopped there and looked at me. I knew that look too well. All my life, whenever something unpleasant needed someone to bear the consequences, she looked at me that way. When my elder sister broke grandmother's favorite vase, I was the one sent to kneel in the ancestral hall. When my sister refused to learn some tiresome rule, I was the one made to take the beating in her place. And now there was a marriage she had rejected. "Mother means?" I asked, although I already knew. "You will marry in your sister's place." Madame Wang said it as casually as if she were deciding what dish to serve for dinner. When the engagement was arranged, it only said a daughter of the Shen family. It did not name a specific girl. "You are also a Shen daughter. It makes no difference if you are the one who marries him." I was silent for a moment. Thinking I meant to refuse, Madame Wang immediately hardened her face. "Yunning, your birth mother died early. The Shen family has raised you all these years. Now the family is in difficulty. If you refuse, I will marry him." Those 3 words stopped all the argument she had prepared. Madame Wang stared at me suspiciously. "You are willing? I have 3 conditions." I raised my head and met her gaze calmly. Her expression changed. She clearly had not expected the quiet, obedient concubine-born daughter she had always considered easy to control to dare bargain with her. But this time she needed me. I did not need her. Suppressing her anger, she asked, "What conditions?" "First, the white jade hairpin and the box of jewelry my birth mother left behind will come with me." Those things had belonged to my mother. Madame Wang had kept them under the excuse of safekeeping for years. If I did not take them back now, I knew I would never see them again. The corner of Madame Wang's mouth twitched. "Fine. Second, after I marry into the general's residence, the Shen family may not ask the Xiao family for benefits under any pretext, and you may not interfere in my life there." It was an impolite thing to say, but I did not care. I knew perfectly well how the Shen family had treated me. Once I married out, I would be like water poured from the household. I would not let them continue using me as a tool. Madame Wang looked even more displeased, but my father finally raised his head, glanced at me and sighed. "We agree." I drew a breath. No matter what happens to the general's residence in the future, and no matter what kind of man General Xiao turns out to be, you may never use today's matter to threaten me. I will marry in Shen Yunlan's place. That means the Shen family owes me this debt. I do not ask you to repay it, but you must acknowledge that it exists." Silence filled the room. Madame Wang watched me for a long time before she suddenly smiled. There was surprise in that smile and a trace of wariness as well. "Yunning, it seems I underestimated you all these years." I did not answer. I simply stood quietly and waited. At last she nodded. "Fine. We agree to all of it. Go back and prepare yourself. On the wedding day, the bridal sedan will come as planned." I bowed and left. The moment I stepped out of the main courtyard, the late autumn wind struck my face. Only then did I realize my palms were soaked with sweat. "Mother, did you see that? Today your daughter finally made a decision for herself. On the wedding day, I was pulled from bed before dawn. The matrons threaded and groomed my face, dressed my hair, and put me through the long sequence of bridal preparations. By the time it was finished, morning had fully arrived. I sat before the bronze mirror and looked at the woman reflected there in a bright red wedding dress and phoenix coronet. For an instant, I felt dazed. That woman was me. Shen Yuning, the concubine-born daughter of the Shen family, was about to marry Xiao Yan, the general who pacifies the north, a man who was said to be unable to father children and whom my elder sister had cast aside like a worn-out shoe. But I did not care. From childhood onward, I had never expected some grand love. I only wanted to live steadily, not bullied, not looked down on, and with a small place in the world that belonged to me. As for children, I looked into my own calm eyes in the mirror and thought, if heaven gives them to me, that is a blessing. If heaven does not, that is fate. All I can do is live my own life well. Some things cannot be forced. When the bridal attendant finally lowered the red veil over my face, I was helped step by step out of the remote side courtyard where I had lived for 18 years. The bridal sedan swayed for almost half an hour before stopping. Firecrackers, festive music, congratulations, and laughter mixed into a roar loud enough to numb my ears. The bridal attendant helped me down. I stepped over the saddle, crossed the brazier, and was given one end of a length of red silk. He held the other end. During the wedding bows, through the narrow gap beneath my veil, I could see only a pair of black official boots embroidered with dark patterns, planted straight and steady. I no longer remember exactly what the elders seated above us said. I remember only that the hand holding the red silk remained steady, all the way, until I was led into the bridal chamber. At last, the noise was shut outside the bridal chamber door. I sat on the wedding bed with the veil still covering my face. I could see nothing. I heard only my breathing and the occasional soft crackle from the wedding candles. The door opened. Footsteps approached, steady and strong, each one seeming to land directly on my heart. They stopped in front of me. I lowered my eyes and saw those black boots again. A long-fingered, strong hand reached out and took the corner of the veil. The red veil was slowly lifted. The candlelight made me narrow my eyes for a moment. When I opened them again, I saw a striking, martial-looking face, pale from illness. Xiao Yan was younger than I had imagined, and thinner. His thick brows extended toward his temples, his nose was high and straight, and his thin lips were pressed tightly together. His eyes were deep and cold, like a dark pool on a winter night, revealing no emotion. His complexion did look poor, carrying the pallor of someone who had only recently recovered from illness. Years at the frontier had clearly left their mark on him. He studied me for a long time as well. Just when I thought he would say something, he turned to the table, poured a cup of tea, and handed it to me. A daughter of the Shen family, he said, his voice low, like a winter wind brushing over bare branches. I know what happened with your sister. My heart tightened. He knew. But did he know I was not the legitimate eldest daughter Shen Yunlan, but the concubine-born second daughter Shen Yuning? Before I could decide how to answer, his next words chilled me from head to toe. I do not care which Shen daughter you are. To me, whoever the Shen family sent would have been the same. He sat across from me, the wedding table between us covered with peanuts, red dates, longans, and lotus seeds. Candlelight flickered across his face. You have heard the physician's diagnosis too, haven't you? His tone was calm, almost indifferent. With this body of mine, I am destined not to have children of my own, so you do not need to worry too much now that you are here. He looked at me. There was none of the intimacy expected on a wedding night in his eyes, only an almost compassionate detachment. I will not force you to do anything. You do not need to fear me. The general's residence may not be a palace of gold, but you will not be mistreated here. After saying that, he stood to leave. General. He stopped and looked back. I rose and bowed to him carefully. I will remember what you have said. Since you have not treated me harshly, I will also do my duty as your wife and as his daughter-in-law of the general's household. I will not make things difficult for you. He watched me for a moment, then nodded. Without saying more, he opened the door and left. When it closed behind him, I finally let out a long breath. That was my wedding night. There were no tender candlelit moments, no newlywed intimacy, only a cold-faced general telling me, I will not force you. Strangely, I did not feel disappointed. Instead, I felt relieved. He did not demand anything from me that I did not want to give. He promised I would not be mistreated. And after discovering that the Shen family had switched brides, he still accepted me. That was already far better than I had expected. I walked to the window and pushed it open. Moonlight spilled inside. The back courtyard of the general's residence was quiet. A maid on night duty saw me and bowed from a distance. I looked at the full moon and whispered in my heart, Mother, I am married. From now on, this is my home. I will make a real life for myself here. According to custom, I had to serve tea to the elders on the morning after the wedding. I woke before dawn. As Queer dressed my hair, she chattered nervously. Young lady, I asked around. Apart from the general, there is an old madam in the residence. She is his father's principal wife, but not his birth mother. There is also the general's aunt. She was widowed when she was young and has lived here ever since. I nodded and understood the situation. Xiao Yan's birth mother had died when he was a child. The current old Madame Xiao had been the late old General Xiao's second wife, so she and Xiao Yan were not related by blood. His aunt was a widowed relative living under the same roof and naturally depended on the household's mistress. The morning tea would not be easy. Sure enough, before I even entered the main hall, I heard a sharp voice from inside. That Shen girl has poor fortune too. Everyone knows what condition the general is in. The legitimate daughter refused to marry him, so the family sent a concubine-born daughter in her place. The old steward's voice cut in. Mind your words, the new madam has arrived. The hall fell silent. I adjusted my clothes and stepped over the threshold. Two women sat in the seats of honor. On the left was a well-fed woman in her 40s, wearing a deep purple robe and a forehead band. Her mouth naturally turned downward, giving her a difficult expression. This was old Madame Xiao. On the right was a thin woman in her early 50s, with high cheekbones and sharp, calculating eyes. She wore dark green and held a teacup. Her gaze swept over me before the corner of her mouth curled faintly. She was the general's aunt. Xiao Yan was there as well, standing to the side in a black robe. The dark color made his tall figure look even straighter, though his face remained pale. I walked forward, knelt properly on the cushion, took the tea offered by a maid, and first presented it to old Madame Xiao. Mother, please have tea. She accepted the cup, slowly took a sip, and only then said, Rise. Since you have entered this family, serve the general well from now on.
Do not learn frivolous habits.
There was nothing openly improper in the words, but the tone was unmistakably a warning. Then I offered tea to the aunt. When she took the cup, her fingers deliberately brushed across the back of my hand. They were icy cold. She smiled. Oh, the new bride's hands are very soft. Clearly you have never done rough work. Well, you are a daughter raised in the Shen family. Naturally you are precious. On the surface it sounded like praise. Underneath, she was saying I was spoiled and useless at managing a household. Before I could answer, Xiao Yan spoke. Aunt, that is where you are mistaken. His voice was not loud, but everyone in the hall could hear him clearly. Of course a daughter of the Shen family is precious. Since she is precious, why should she be doing rough work? The general's residence can afford servants. There is no reason for its mistress to do servant's work herself. The aunt's smile froze. After an awkward pause, she said, The general is right, of course. Old Madame Xiao looked at Xiao Yan with displeasure but said nothing. Beside them, Steward Xiao's mouth curved faintly. After the tea ceremony, Xiao Yan walked me back. He remained 2 steps ahead of me along the corridor, and neither of us spoke. At a turn in the walkway, he suddenly stopped. I nearly walked into his back and quickly retreated half a step. He turned to face me and was silent for a moment. Do not take what they said just now to heart. I understand. From now on, you decide the matters of the inner household as you see fit. If anyone deliberately makes things difficult for you, tell me. He paused, then added, I told you I would not let you be wronged. With that, he turned and left. His black robe lifted slightly in the wind, and soon he disappeared around the far end of the corridor. I stood there watching his back as something in a quiet corner of my heart shifted. This man spoke as though he meant to keep his distance, yet everything he actually did was meant to protect me. The days that followed were calmer than I had imagined. Xiao Yan rose between 5 and 7 each morning to practice martial arts, left for the military camp between 7 and 9, and returned toward evening. I managed the inner residence, arranged meals, checked the storerooms, and kept the accounts. My days were busy but satisfying. His aunt occasionally found trivial faults. The food was too salty or too bland, the tea too hot or too cold. None of it mattered. I answered politely and continued doing what needed to be done. Old Madame Xiao rarely interfered. She spent most of her time reciting sutras in her private Buddhist room and seldom asked about household affairs. Steward Xiao, meanwhile, gradually changed from formal politeness to genuine warmth. One afternoon while I was checking bolts of fabric in the storeroom, Quayer rushed in. Young lady, something's happened. Someone from the Shen family is here. I put down the account book. Who? Madame Wang, my father's principal wife. Why had she come? I already had a suspicion. I straightened my clothes and went out to receive her. Madame Wang stood in the reception hall with 2 maids. openly inspecting her surroundings. She was dressed unusually grandly in a royal blue brocade robe woven with gold, with a red gold dangling hair ornament in her hair, as if she had dressed especially for this visit. The moment she saw me, a warm smile appeared on her face. "Yunning, mother came to see you." She called me Yunning and called herself my mother, as though we had always been close. I did not expose the pretense, I simply bowed slightly. "Mother, please sit." She had barely taken her seat, and the tea had not even arrived before she started. "Yunning, are you doing well in the general's residence? Does the general treat you properly?" "Everything is fine." "Good, good." She rubbed her hands together and smiled. "Well, Yunning, now that you are the general's wife, the Shen family shares some of your honor. Your father has recently been hoping for a certain post in the Ministry of Revenue. If the general could put in a word—" "Mother," I cut her off. Madame Wang blinked. I looked at her and spoke clearly. "Do you remember the second condition you agreed to before my wedding?" Her expression changed. "The Shen family may not seek benefits from the Xiao family under any pretext," I repeated. "You agreed very readily that day." "It has been only a little over a month. Are you already going back on your word?" Her face darkened. "Yunning, what manner is that to speak to your mother? Even if you are married, you are still a Shen daughter. Your father's position, the general, has returned." Queer called from outside. Madame Wang immediately changed her expression, rose and bowed to Xiao Yan as he entered. "Greetings, General." He did not even look at her. He walked straight to my side and asked softly, "Are you all right?" He had just dismounted. Dust clung, fine sweat showed at his forehead. He had clearly received word and hurried back. Warmth rose inside me. I shook my head. Only then did he turn to Madame Wang. "Madame Shen." His voice had returned to its usual cold distance. "Why have you come today?" Pressed by his presence, she forced a smile. "Nothing important. I only came to see Yunning." "I see," Xiao Yan said flatly. "You have seen her. Please return home. It is getting late." "Take care on the road." It was an unmistakable dismissal. Madame Wang's face shifted between red and white. She did not dare offend him and could only leave awkwardly. Before she went, she looked back at me. There was anger and resentment in her eyes, along with something I had never seen before, a trace of weariness. Perhaps she had finally realized that the concubine-born daughter she once controlled so easily was truly beyond her reach now. After she left, Xiao Yan looked at me. "The next time she comes, you do not have to see her. She is still my family. It would be improper not to receive her at all." He frowned, apparently weighing propriety against his promise that I would not suffer grievances. At last he said, "Then make her wait in the front hall. She is not to enter the inner courtyard." I could not help smiling. "What are you smiling at?" "Nothing." I tried to hide it. "I only think that sometimes, General, you are rather adorable." His ears reddened visibly. He cleared his throat, turned, and walked away. After 2 steps he stopped without looking back. "Do not wait for me at dinner. I have official work in the study." Then he strode away quickly. No matter how I looked at it, his retreat had the distinct air of someone fleeing in embarrassment. Queer covered her mouth and laughed. I watched him disappear around the corridor and felt that quiet corner of my heart stir again. That night, I was awakened after midnight by hurried footsteps. Queer pushed open the door, her face pale. "Young lady, something's wrong. The general's old injury has flared up." I did not even have time to throw on an outer robe. I shoved my feet into my shoes and hurried out. Xiao Yan's room was in the eastern wing of the main courtyard. When I arrived, the room was brightly lit. 2 guards stood outside with grave faces. Steward Xiao stood by the bed with hot water, so anxious that sweat covered his brow. Xiao Yan lay on the bed. Veins stood out on his feverish forehead. His lips were tightly pressed together, and large beads of sweat rolled down his face. His whole body was curled with pain, yet he refused to make a sound. Blood had stained the white inner robe at his left shoulder, where the old wound had reopened. "What happened?" Steward Xiao answered quickly. "The general's old wound came from a poisoned arrow at the frontier. It damaged the muscles and bone. The poison was later removed, but the injury acts up whenever the weather turns damp. Tonight it was especially severe, and the wound opened again." I touched Xiao Yan's forehead. It was burning. "Has an imperial physician been summoned?" "Someone has gone, but the Imperial Medical Institute is far away. Even at the fastest pace, the round trip will take close to half an hour." Half an hour. Was he supposed to endure the pain like this until then? My heart tightened. I took the basin from Steward Xiao, wrung out a cloth and gently laid it over Xiao Yan's forehead. He seemed to feel the coolness and opened his eyes slightly. When he saw me, he paused and tried to turn away. "Do not move." I pressed him gently back. "Your wound is bleeding. Go back to sleep," he said hoarsely. "You are not needed here. Whether you need me is not yours alone to decide." He looked at me. Something trembled faintly in those eyes that were usually as still and cold as deep water. For the next half hour, I changed the cloth on his forehead 7 or 8 times, wiped away his sweat, and moistened his lips little by little with warm water. At first he resisted, but later, perhaps because the fever blurred his awareness, he unconsciously leaned closer to my hand. The imperial physician finally arrived. He treated and rewrapped the wound, used acupuncture, and prescribed medicine. The physician said there was nothing serious for the moment, but Xiao Yan needed proper rest and recovery. Otherwise, every change in weather would bring the same suffering. After the physician left, I stayed beside the bed all night. Near dawn, Xiao Yan's fever finally eased and his breathing became even. Only then did I relax and prepare to return to my room. The moment I stood, fingers closed around my wrist, I looked down. Xiao Yan was awake, watching me. The usual distance and restraint were gone from his eyes, replaced by an emotion I could not quite understand. "You stayed with me all night?" Your old injury flared up. "As your wife, I should care for you." He was silent for a moment, then loosened his hand. "Go and rest," he said, his voice carrying a softness that was almost impossible to detect. "Thank you for tonight," I bowed and left. As I stepped out, the first light of dawn fell across my face, warm as the palm that had just held my wrist. During the days Xiao Yan recovered, I personally prepared his medicine and brought it to him 3 times a day. At first he always told me to let servants handle it and not trouble myself. I answered only once, "I do not trust anyone else with it." After that, he stopped arguing. Each time he silently accepted the bowl and drank it in one go. The medicine was extremely bitter. His brows tightened every time, but he never complained. So when I brought his medicine, I began bringing a small plate of candied fruit as well. The first time I set it before him, he stared at it for quite a while, then looked up at me. "The medicine is bitter," I said. "Eat one and it will not taste so bad." He picked up a piece, put it in his mouth, chewed twice, and finally gave a one-word judgment. "Sweet." Somehow that single word sounded almost aggrieved. I nearly laughed aloud. The mighty general who pacifies the north, an iron-willed man decisive on the battlefield, was afraid of bitter medicine. Knowing that made him seem less distant. Half a month later, most of his injury had healed. One evening, instead of spending the night in his study dealing with official matters, he unexpectedly came to sit in my courtyard for a while. I happened to be repotting an orchid. My hands were covered in soil. When I looked up, I saw him standing by the moon gate in a moon-white robe with a jade belt. He looked softer than usual. "General, why are you here?" "I came to see you." He sat on the stone bench and glanced at the flower pot in my hands. "What are you doing?" "I brought this orchid from the Shen residence. Its roots have filled the pot, so it needs a larger one." I kept adding soil to the new pot. He watched for a moment, then stood, walked over, and took the small trowel from my hand. "I'll do it, General." "Your hands are delicate. This soil is coarse. You might hurt them." He kept his head lowered while he said it, and his ears reddened again. I stood beside him and watched the great general crouch on the ground to repot an orchid. He was terribly clumsy at it. Soil spilled everywhere, but his expression was as focused as if he were arranging troops for battle. When he finished, he rose and brushed the dirt from his hands. Then he looked at the orchid he had planted crookedly and appeared for once embarrassed. "It may not look very good." I looked down. The pot was crooked, the soil surface uneven, and the poor orchid stood awkwardly in the middle as though someone had forced it there. But when I raised my head, I smiled. "It looks good. Better than if I had done it." His eyes brightened. This man had won great military honors, could maneuver deftly through court politics, and was respected by countless people. Yet now a single word of praise from me made him look as pleased as a child. My heart missed another beat. The days grew warmer, and before long summer arrived. It was the Empress Dowager's birthday. The palace held a banquet, and officials of the 3rd rank and above attended with their families. Xiao Yan was the general who pacifies the north and held a hereditary marquisate, so naturally he was among the invited. As his wife, I had to accompany him. It was the first time I would appear publicly as General Xiao's wife. I would be lying if I said I was not nervous. From early morning, I could not settle down. I changed clothes 3 times and disliked every set. Quayer hurried around until she looked ready to empty my entire wardrobe onto the bed. In the end, Xiao Yan came in, looked once at the clothes spread everywhere, selected a moon-white palace dress embroidered with fine silver thread and handed it to me. "Wear this. Is it too plain?" "No." He looked at me. "You look good in light colors." That one sentence settled me completely. The banquet was held in the Hall of Supreme Harmony. By the time Xiao Yan and I entered, many guests had already taken their seats. Civil and military officials sat with their families as wine cups passed from hand to hand amid the fragrance and shimmer of formal dress. Xiao Yan's position at court was extremely high. The moment he entered, many people rose to greet him. He nodded in return, while one hand remained lightly at the small of my back, as though quietly lending me strength. After we sat, I looked around and noticed many glances drifting toward me. I knew what they were looking at. The substitute bride from the Shen family. The unfortunate woman who, according to gossip, had married a general incapable of fathering children. One gaze was especially direct. It came from a noblewoman seated opposite us. She wore a pomegranate red formal dress and glittering ornaments with a bright, striking face. She was examining me without the slightest attempt to hide it. "Who is she?" I asked softly. Xiao Yan followed my gaze. His brows drew together almost imperceptibly. "Madame Zhou, wife of the heir to the Duke of Dingguo, ignore her." But he had barely finished speaking before Madame Zhou came over holding a wine cup. "General Xiao, Madame Xiao." She bowed with a smile, her eyes traveling over me. "I have heard so much about Madame Xiao. Now that I finally see you, your reputation is indeed deserved." The words were polite. The tone was not. It clearly meant, "So this is the concubine-born substitute bride." I did not become angry. I merely inclined my head slightly. "Madame Zhou is too kind." Seeing that I would not rise to the bait, she changed direction. "Speaking of it, Madame Xiao is completely different from your elder sister. Back then, your sister was one of the most famous beauties in the capital. So many families came to ask for her hand that they nearly wore out the threshold. What a pity." She paused deliberately and gave Xiao Yan a meaningful look. What a pity she fled the marriage. Still, Madame Xiao need not mind. Being able to marry into the general's residence is already an enormous blessing. Now the insult was open. "You are only your sister's replacement. You received the man she rejected. You should be grateful for whatever you have." The nearby tables went quiet. Everyone was listening for a spectacle. I set down my cup and was about to answer when Xiao Yan spoke first. "Madame Zhou is mistaken." His voice was not loud, but it was clear and steady enough for everyone nearby to hear. "Shen Yunlan and I had nothing more than a written betrothal. Since she did not wish to marry me, I did not force her. But Shen Yuning," he turned to look at me. There was a warmth in his eyes I had never seen before. "Shen Yuning is the wife I married openly and properly. She is the mistress of the general's residence. Her marrying me is not her good fortune. I am the one blessed with 3 lifetimes of good fortune." The entire hall was stunned. Madame Zhou's smile became rigid. Her wine cup remained suspended awkwardly in her hand. At last she forced out, "General and Madame are deeply devoted." I spoke out of turn. Then she returned to her seat in embarrassment. I lowered my head, my heart beating fast, not from nervousness but because of what he had said. "I am the one blessed with 3 lifetimes of good fortune." Did he truly mean it, or had he only said it to protect me? On the journey home, I sat inside the carriage while Xiao Yan rode beside it. For a long while I could see nothing through the curtain. I hesitated, then finally lifted it. "General." He reined in his horse and looked down at me. Under the moonlight, his face was still pale, but much of the winter ice in his eyes had somehow melted away. "What you said at the banquet?" I asked softly. "Did you mean it?" He was silent for a moment. I thought he would not answer and was about to lower the curtain when I heard him speak. "I have never spoken falsely in my life." Then he urged his horse forward, leaving me clutching the curtain with burning cheeks. The attack happened on our way home. When the carriage reached the middle of Chang'an Street, I was leaning against the wall and nearly asleep when a sharp sound cut through the air. Then Xiao Yan shouted, "Assassins! Protect Madam!" The horses panicked and the carriage lurched violently. I was thrown against the side and struck my forehead, leaving an aching bump. Outside came the clash of weapons and cries rising one after another. I lifted a corner of the curtain and saw 7 or 8 men dressed in black fighting Xiao Yan and his guards. Xiao Yan had a sword in his hand. Its blade flashed like snow, and with each stroke another attacker went down. But his old injury had not completely healed, and a trace of stiffness showed in some of his movements. He drove one attacker away. Another rushed up from behind, driving a dagger toward his back. "Careful," I shouted. But before the word had fully left my mouth, Xiao Yan had already turned and knocked the dagger aside with his sword. Before he could recover his stance, a third attacker came from the side and fired a crossbow bolt. He did not move away. The carriage was directly behind him. If he dodged, the bolt would pass through the curtain toward me. He took the bolt in his left shoulder instead. He gave a muffled grunt and staggered. I heard the bolt tear through his clothing as it struck him, and blood instantly soaked through his clothes. At last the city defense troops arrived. The remaining men in black fled. I jumped from the carriage and scrambled to Xiao Yan's side. He was down on one knee, bracing himself with his sword wedged against the paving stones. Half the bolt shaft remained in his left shoulder, and blood ran down his arm and pooled on the ground. "How are you?" My voice shook. He raised his head. The moment he saw I was unharmed, he actually looked relieved. "You're safe, that's enough." Then his strength gave way and he collapsed against me. A physician hurried to the general's residence that night. Fortunately, the bolt had not gone deeply enough to damage his sinews or bones. Xiao Yan had lost a great deal of blood and needed rest. He remained unconscious for 2 hours, and through all of it his hand gripped mine so tightly that no one could pry his fingers loose. So I sat beside his bed and waited. He woke in the latter half of the night. At first he stared blankly at the canopy. Then he turned, saw me, and his gaze cleared. "Were you hurt?" he asked hoarsely. This fool. He had been wounded protecting me, yet the first thing he asked after waking was whether I was hurt. My nose stung and tears nearly came. "I'm fine," I said. "But why were you so foolish? You could have avoided it. If I moved, the bolt would have hit the carriage curtain. You were inside, but you were injured again. I am a general." His tone was almost casual. "At the frontier I suffered injuries 10 times worse than this. This is nothing." He made it sound simple, but looking at his pale face and the bandage on his shoulder made my heart ache. "Xiao Yan." It was the first time I called his name instead of saying, "General." He went still. I took his hand. "Do not ever do something that foolish again. I am not some fragile noble lady who needs you to wager your life to protect me. I have endured hardship since I was a child. I have suffered humiliation. I am not afraid of being hurt, and I am not even afraid of death." He opened his mouth, but I did not let him interrupt. "But I am afraid of you being hurt." I looked straight into his eyes. "I am afraid you will die." The room became very quiet except for the faint crackling of the candlewick. Xiao Yan watched me for a long time. Shock, emotion, and a trace of helpless vulnerability I had never seen before passed through his eyes. "Shen Yunning." When he used my full name, his voice was barely more than a sigh. "Do you know what you are saying?" "I do." His throat moved. "I am not worth this from you. You know this body of mine can never give you children." "Xiao Yan." I cut him off. "I do not care whether you can give me children. I care about you. You are the man who told me on our wedding night that you would never let me be mistreated. You are the man who protected me in front of Madame Wang. You are the man who stood before the entire palace banquet and said that marrying me was a blessing earned over 3 lifetimes. I tightened my fingers around his hand. "You asked whether I understand what I am saying. I do. I only know that you are the person who has treated me better than anyone else in this world. If anyone can call this 3 lifetimes of good fortune, then I am the fortunate one too." His eyes slowly reddened. He turned his hand over and gripped mine so tightly that it felt as though he wanted to press my hand into his very bones. "Yunning," he said in a rough voice, "I am afraid that one day you will regret this." "I will not." I looked at him steadily. "General, I am not afraid of being held back." Those words seemed to unlock a door he had kept shut for years. He suddenly pulled me into his arms and held me with the arm that was not injured. His chin rested against the top of my head, and his heart pounded beneath my ear like a war drum. "I will not let you regret it," he said above me. "Not in this lifetime." I rested against him, breathing in the clean, cool scent of medicine and the faint metallic scent of blood, and slowly smiled. Moonlight shone brightly outside the window, spilling a pale wash across the floor. For the first time, I felt that heaven had not treated me badly after all. In the 8th month of the year, I began feeling unwell. At first, I only lost my appetite. Every morning I woke nauseated, and the smell of cooking oil made my stomach turn. Quayer initially thought I had been affected by the summer heat and made mung bean soup for me, but it did not help. Before long, even Xiao Yan noticed. One morning, while we were eating breakfast together, I had barely put a piece of sweet and sour pork rib into my mouth when my stomach rolled. I dropped my chopsticks, ran outside, and retched. Xiao Yan followed immediately, his expression changing. Without another word, he made to go to the palace and summon an imperial physician himself. I stopped him. "I may simply have eaten something bad. It is nothing serious." He ignored me and summoned a physician anyway. The man who came was Imperial Physician Zhang, an elderly, highly respected doctor with graying hair who had served in the Imperial Medical Institute for most of his life. He took my pulse. The longer he examined it, the more tightly his brows drew together. Xiao Yan stood nearby, so tense that his clenched fists had turned white. "Physician Zhang, what is wrong with my wife?" The physician withdrew his hand, stroked his beard, and gave us a rather strange look. "General, madam is with child." The words fell into the silent reception room like a stone dropped into deep water. Xiao Yan froze. His face moved from anxiety to confusion, from confusion to disbelief, then into an emotion so complicated that I could not read it. What did you say? Even his voice trembled. Imperial physician Zhang looked astonished himself. He took my pulse again, this time for much longer. At last, he said slowly, "It is certainly a pregnancy pulse. Judging by the pulse, Madam is approximately 2 months along. I have practiced medicine for 40 years. I would not mistake this." Xiao Yan swayed and caught the edge of the table before sitting down. He looked as though someone had struck him senseless. But his lips moved twice. Back then, Imperial physician Zhou said, he could not finish. Physician Zhang sighed. "General, forgive an old physician for speaking frankly. I was present when Imperial physician Zhou treated you. At the time, he said your injury had damaged your foundation and that you had no hope of descendants. Even then, I believed the conclusion was questionable. Out of regard for a colleague, I did not contradict him on the spot, but now it appears." He left the sentence unfinished, but the meaning was clear. Xiao Yan sat there for a long time without speaking. I thought he was simply overwhelmed with happiness, so I walked toward him. Then I stopped. His eyes were red. This was a man who could take an arrow on the battlefield without making a sound. Now his eyes were red, his throat moving. He tried to control himself, and the fingers gripping the table were pale from the force. "Yunning." He looked up at me, his voice hoarse. "Did you hear that?" "I heard. I have a child," he whispered. "My child." Then he suddenly stood, paced twice across the room, turned back and grabbed my hand. "Do you feel uncomfortable anywhere? What do you want to eat? Should I call more imperial physicians to confirm? I should go burn incense for your mother, General." I pressed his hands down and could not help laughing. "Calm down." "I cannot calm down." A real smile finally appeared on his face, growing wider and wider like spring water breaking through ice. "Yunning, I am going to be a father." He looked almost foolish with happiness. I had never seen him smile like that. My own heart felt both sore and full, as if something had broken through the earth and begun to grow. The news spread faster than I expected. Within 3 days, the whole capital knew that the wife of the general who pacifies the north was pregnant. The wife of the man whom an imperial physician had declared unable to father children was with child. Discussion erupted everywhere. Some said heaven had opened its eyes. Xiao Yan had fought loyally for the realm and should not be left without an heir. Others said the child could not be his. That second rumor spread more fiercely. Have you heard? The Imperial Medical Institute issued a firm diagnosis about General Xiao years ago. He was said to be completely unable to have descendants. His wife has not been married to him for very long, and now she is pregnant? How could it be that convenient? Exactly. Who knows where the child came from? General Xiao spends every day at the military camp, while Madame is left alone at home. Who knows? Perhaps the Shen family's concubine-born daughter could not bear the loneliness and found another man to father the child. The words were like knives, cutting into the heart one after another. I had not yet lost my temper, but Queer cried with anger and wanted to confront the people spreading them. I stopped her. There is no need to argue. But young lady, what they are saying is horrible. That is exactly why we should not waste ourselves on it, I said calmly. Other people's mouths are beyond our control. The child is in my body. That is what I can control. Xiao Yan reacted more fiercely than I did. At court, an official said in a pointed, insinuating tone, "Congratulations, General Xiao. Still, this is your first child. It is best to be cautious." The implication was obvious. Xiao Yan turned and looked at him, his gaze as cold as a blade in the depths of winter. "What exactly are you suggesting?" Relying on his position as an imperial censor, the official forced himself to answer. This official only meant to offer a kind reminder. After all, the general's physical condition is widely known. Xiao Yan suddenly smiled. There was no warmth in it. "My body is my concern. My wife is my wife. And of course the child in her womb is mine." He stepped closer and looked down at the official. "What is this, Lord Fang? Are you so interested in my family affairs?" Censor Fang was forced back a step, cold sweat appearing on his forehead. Xiao Yan looked around the court and raised his voice. "Before all my colleagues, I will say this once. From today onward, anyone who dares slander my wife becomes my enemy. I have killed enemies on the frontier. One more man here at court would make no difference." The hall went silent. The general's residence was no calmer. Somehow Madame Wang heard the rumors and came again. This time she was not seeking favors. She came to take advantage of my misfortune. "Yunning," Madame Wang said unhurriedly in the reception hall, a teacup in hand, "I have heard the things people are saying outside. You finally managed to marry into the general's residence. How could this happen?" She sighed as if deeply concerned, but her eyes were full of satisfaction at my trouble. "What do you want to say, mother?" "Nothing. I only worry about you." She set down her cup and lowered her voice. "Tell mother the truth. Is this child really the general's? If you did something foolish, there is still time. Mother can think of a solution for you." A calculating gleam flashed in her eyes. She wanted me to admit something. If I showed the slightest guilt, she would have leverage over me that I might never be able to escape. I was about to answer when a cold voice came from the doorway. Madam Shen. Xiao Yan had returned at some point. He stood in the doorway against the light. I could not see his expression clearly, but the chill around him seemed to lower the temperature of the whole room. Madame Wang hurried to her feet and bowed. General, you are back. I only came to see Yunning. I heard every word you just said. Her face went white. Xiao Yan walked in slowly, each step seeming to tread directly on Madame Wang's heart. Madame Shen doubts that the child in my wife's womb is mine. He stopped before her. Then whose child does Madame Shen imagine it to be? General, please calm your anger. I meant only kindness. Her voice trembled. Kindness? Xiao Yan gave a cold laugh. Since my wife entered the Xiao family, you have come again and again. The first time you wanted a position for Lord Shen. The second time you came to spread rumors. Is that your kindness? He bent slightly toward her and spoke word by word. Madame Shen, this is my final warning. If you set foot through the Xiao family's gate again, I will have your legs broken and send you back to the Shen residence. If you speak another malicious word about my wife outside, I will deal with every Shen family business in the capital along with you. Do you understand? Madame Wang looked at Shen. She scrambled out of the residence in panic. When she was gone, Xiao Yan turned to me. The harshness in his expression vanished at once, replaced by extraordinary gentleness. Did she frighten you? I shook my head. He walked over and crouched in front of me so that he had to look up. In that position he did not resemble a general hardened by war. He looked more like a large dog that had tucked away all its claws. I'm sorry, he said. For what? I did not protect you well enough. I let those words reach your ears. That is my fault. My eyes suddenly burned. This man had carried an unjust reputation for years. Now that he had finally begun to clear his name, the rumors outside were still stabbing at the same old wound. Yet he was not thinking of himself. He was thinking of me. Xiao Yan? I held his face in my hands. Are you foolish? He blinked. You could explain. You are not infertile. You have a child of your own. You can prove it to everyone. I do not need to prove anything to them. He cut me off, his eyes burning into mine. I only need you and the child to be safe. My palms rested against his cheeks. With my hand still against his face, I saw his throat move slightly. Yunning, he said very softly, as though releasing an emotion suppressed for years. It is not that I cannot have children. It is that I can only have a child with you. Tears fell without warning. Not because I felt wronged, but because of the weight hidden in those words. Not that I cannot. Only with you. All those years of restraint, endurance, and self-doubt seemed to be healed at once by the child growing inside me. I bent down until my forehead rested against his. Fool, I whispered. The world is so large, but you are the only man I would ever choose to bear children for. His eyes brightened as though every star in the night had fallen into them. As my belly grew day by day and moving became less convenient, one question remained in my mind. Where had that verdict of infertility come from? Imperial physician Zhang's words kept returning to me. When Imperial physician Zhou declared that Xiao Yan's foundation had been damaged and he had no hope of descendants, Zhang had already thought the conclusion doubtful. If it was doubtful, then perhaps the diagnosis had been wrong from the beginning, or perhaps someone had deliberately made it wrong. After several months of careful recuperation, his condition improved steadily. His old injury had indeed come from a poisoned arrow at the frontier. The wound had been serious, but the poison had long since been cleared. According to Imperial physician Zhang, although his body was not as robust as that of an ordinary healthy man, the old injury should not have prevented him from fathering children at all. Zhang told me privately that the old diagnosis had only two likely explanations. Either Imperial physician Zhou had been incompetent, or he had acted with another purpose. I suspected the second. Everything was too convenient. Xiao Yan was the general who pacifies the north. He held major military power and had been one of the senior ministers whom the late emperor had entrusted with supporting his young successor. If he had descendants, the Xiao line would continue, and the military officers loyal to him would rally even more firmly around him. His influence would become difficult to shake. But if he could never have children, then no matter how many victories he won, his line would end with him. However strong his faction became, those at court who feared him could wait for it to disappear within a generation. Who would benefit from that? My first thought was one of his old political enemies. He had spent 10 years at the frontier, defeated countless enemies, and won tremendous military merit. But at court, not everyone welcomed a general whose reputation and power grew so high. I had people investigate the military physicians who had treated him after the original injury. Most of the trail had gone cold. Too many years had passed. Some of the old physicians were dead, others scattered. Only one man could be found, a retired military physician surnamed Liu, now living by farming in his native village in Tongzhou. Steward Xiao personally traveled to Tongzhou and returned with startling information. The prescription Imperial physician Zhou had given him all those years ago had been wrong. Old military physician Liu said he had seen it at the time. It contained several herbs with extremely cold properties. His injury involved heat toxin, and the normal treatment should have focused on restoring and warming his weakened body. Zhou had done the opposite. Those cold medicines temporarily suppressed the heat, but they also weakened his constitution severely. That prescription was designed to ruin the general's health, Liu had said. I knew something was wrong even then. But Imperial physician Zhou had been sent by the Imperial Medical Institute. I was only a military physician of little standing, and my words carried little weight. That was still not enough. I needed to know why Zhou had done it and who had ordered him. For a time, the trail ended there. Then heaven placed a new clue directly before me. One day while I was walking in the rear garden, Quayer came to report that an elderly woman was waiting at the gate and begged to see me, claiming she had something important to confess. I ordered that she be brought in. The woman was about 60, dressed in plain gray cloth. The moment she saw me, she fell to her knees. Madam, this old servant is guilty. Who are you? My surname is Sun. Years ago I worked in Imperial physician Zhou's household as a washerwoman who also did menial work. I served the Zhou family for 10 years and learned things I should never have known. For years my conscience has troubled me. I wanted to speak, but I was afraid of bringing disaster on myself. Now I have heard that Madam is pregnant. I believe heaven has shown its judgment, and the time has come. What do you know? Nanny Sun raised her head. Fear flashed through her cloudy old eyes, but relief was stronger. That diagnosis was not something physician Zhou gave willingly. Someone threatened the lives of his entire family and forced him to say it. My heart jolted. Who? She swallowed. Qian Zhongyuan, the left censor-in-chief at the time. The name struck through my memory like lightning. Qian Zhongyuan had been the left censor-in-chief under the previous emperor, a man who wielded enormous influence at court and stood in fierce opposition to Xiao Yan. Xiao Yan advocated a northern campaign. Qian Zhongyuan repeatedly argued for peace. The two had clashed countless times. Later, Qian Zhongyuan was stripped of office and exiled for a corruption case. He died on the road to exile, and his political faction was eventually purged. So it had been him. Nanny Sun continued. Lord Qian feared that the general would win too many victories, rise too high at court, and threaten his own influence. He bribed Imperial physician Zhou, threatened his family, had him tamper with the general's prescription, and forced him to issue the diagnosis that the general could never have descendants. That way, however great the general's achievements became, his power would have no lasting line behind it. And physician Zhou afterward? Not long after Qian Zhongyuan fell, physician Zhou retired and returned to his hometown. He died of illness the next year. Before he died, he kept saying that he had wronged General Xiao and that what he had done was the greatest sin of his life. I sat in silence for a long time, so that was the truth. His years of silent endurance, insecurity, and self-restraint had not been heaven's decree. They had been caused by human hands, a scheme born from struggles for power, and the price of human malice. I told Xiao Yan everything. He sat in his study with all the evidence Steward Xiao had gathered spread across the desk. Old military physician Liu's testimony, Nanny Sun's written statement, a surviving fragment of Imperial physician Zhou's old prescription, and correspondence linking Qian Zhongyuan with Zhou. Xiao Yan read each item. His expression was terrifyingly calm. So that is what happened, he finally said. There was no fury in his voice, no hatred, only the relief of a burden finally lifted. All these years I thought I was simply born unlucky. I looked at him, my chest aching. He reached for my hand instead. Do not carry this too heavily. Qian Zhongyuan is dead. Zhou is dead. Heaven has already settled those accounts, but the suffering you endured all these years, it is over. He placed my hand on his knee and looked at me. Yunning, the worst suffering was never that ridiculous diagnosis. It was believing I did not deserve to be loved. His eyes held nothing back now. You taught me that I do. My nose stung. I leaned into his arms. This man had endured so much, yet in the end what he remembered most was the small amount of sweetness I had given him. At that moment, noise broke out beyond the study. Steward Xiao's voice rose outside. Eldest young lady Shen, you cannot go in. The general and madam are speaking. Move aside. I need to see the general. Even after so long, I recognized that voice immediately. Shen Yunlan, my elder sister who had fled the marriage, had returned. Xiao Yan looked at me. I nodded. Let her enter, he said. Shen Yunlan burst into the study with the same arrogant, overbearing manner she had always shown in the Shen residence, as if no one else mattered. She wore a soft rose-red dress and gold hairpins, clearly having dressed with care. Her gaze first landed on Xiao Yan, then moved to my pregnant belly. Her face changed. General. She drew a breath and arranged her face into a pitiful expression. I came to ask the general's forgiveness. Xiao Yan did not answer. He simply looked at her. When that failed to move him, Yunlan's tears immediately began to fall. Back then, I did not truly wish to flee the marriage. My mother forced me. She told me the general's health was ruined, that if I married you, I would live like a widow despite having a husband. I was young and ignorant. She frightened me, and that was why She dabbed at her tears and stole a glance at Xiao Yan. Later, I regretted it constantly. I heard the general had married my younger sister. Although it hurt, I was also happy for Yunning. I simply could never let go of my feelings for the general. That is why I shamelessly returned, hoping only to see you once. It was a skillfully arranged speech. First, she placed the blame for fleeing on Madame Wang. Then she presented herself as a frightened young woman forced into the decision. Next came her supposedly lasting feelings for Xiao Yan, followed by generous concern for her younger sister. A different man might have been deceived. Unfortunately for her, the man before her was Xiao Yan. Have you finished? He asked. Yunlan froze. Whether you fled because you chose to or because someone forced you does not concern me, he said. You fled. For that, I thank you. Her eyes widened. Xiao Yan turned toward me. His gaze softened like spring water. If you had not fled, how would I ever have married Yunning? Yunlan's face went completely white. She opened her mouth to speak, but Xiao Yan raised a hand. There is no need to discuss the past. I now have a wife and a child. I am entirely content. If eldest young lady Shen has nothing else to say, please leave. Shen Yunlan left in tears. When she reached the gate of the general's residence, she looked back at the plaque over the entrance. The emotions in her eyes were complicated: regret, unwillingness, jealousy, and a trace of bitter resentment I could not quite name. Perhaps she had believed that something she once rejected would always remain hers to reclaim. Perhaps she believed that because she was the legitimate daughter and I was concubine-born, she would always live better than I did. She had been wrong. There are roads in life that do not lead backward. What you voluntarily abandon cannot be picked up again later, even if you return on your knees. Xiao Yan stood behind me and watched her leave. Do you truly have no regrets? I suddenly asked. Regrets about what? Not marrying her. She was, after all, the legitimate Shen daughter, the accomplished beauty whose status matched yours. He turned me around, placed both hands on my shoulders, and lowered his head until our eyes met. Shen Yunning, the thing I regret most is that when the engagement was first made, I did not ask for you by name. I stared at him. A faint, gentle smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. You are not anyone's substitute, you are my wife. The sunset that day was unusually beautiful, the whole sky layered with different shades of red. I leaned against him and thought, Heaven, did you save all my luck for this 1 year and give it to me all at once? My labor began in the 9th month. From morning onward, I felt a faint ache in my belly. By afternoon, the pains had grown stronger and came in waves, as though something inside me were pressing hard to get out. Kur was terrified. She ran out shouting for the midwives. Xiao Yan was at the military camp when he received the news. He rode back at full speed, still in his official uniform, his boots covered in mud. When he reached the delivery room door, Steward Xiao stopped him. General, the birthing room is considered unclean. You cannot enter. His eyes were red. Move, he roared, startling Steward Xiao. My wife is inside. I do not care whether it is clean or unclean. Move aside. Steward Xiao and several matrons struggled to keep him outside, and finally persuaded him to sit in a chair by the door. He could not sit for long. He paced back and forth, every step as though he were walking on the edge of a blade. Inside, the midwives encouraged me again and again. Madam, push. Keep pushing. The baby's head is already visible. I gritted my teeth. Sweat soaked through me, and the pain made my vision darken in waves, but I refused to stop. I told myself silently, Shen Yunning, endure a little longer. This is his child. The child he has longed for after so many years. The child who will prove to the world that Xiao Yan is not the useless man they had written him off as. You cannot give up. Then a baby's loud cry filled the room. Congratulations, madam. Congratulations, general. It is a young master. Mother and son are safe. The midwife was so overjoyed that she cried. She brought the tiny wrinkled baby close enough for me to see. I smiled weakly and thought it was finally over. But before the midwife could leave to announce the birth, another wave of pain came. Wait, another midwife exclaimed. There is another baby. I stared at her. Outside, Xiao Yan had already heard the first cry. He dropped heavily into the chair and covered his face with both hands, his shoulders shaking. Steward Xiao wiped his eyes and repeated, Heaven has eyes. Heaven truly has eyes. Kuer was crying as well. Then, before anyone could recover from that joy, a second baby's cry came from the delivery room, even louder than the first. Everyone outside froze. Xiao Yan shot to his feet and rushed to the door. What happened? The door opened a narrow crack. A midwife leaned out, her expression both shocked and delighted. General, there was another. They are twins, a boy and a girl. Madam is safe. Both the young master and the young lady are safe. Twins! Xiao Yan stood motionless. His lips trembled, his eyes turned red. He wanted to speak, but no words came. The man who made decisive choices on the battlefield, maneuvered with ease at court, and could face thousands of soldiers without so much as a frown stood outside the birthing room with tears running down his face. When I woke again, it was already dark. My whole body ached, but my mind was clearer. Xiao Yan sat at my bedside, unmoving, holding my hand and watching me without blinking. His eyes were red and swollen. He had clearly cried more than once. You're awake. His voice was rough. Are you hungry? Do you want water? I'll bring it. Where are the children? Next door. The wet nurses are caring for them, he said. A son and a daughter. The boy came first and the girl second. Our son's cry is very loud. Our daughter's is much more delicate. The midwives said they had never delivered twins this healthy. As he spoke, tears fell again. This man had used up what seemed like an entire year's supply of tears in one day. I want to see them. He immediately had the wet nurses bring them in. 2 small swaddled bundles were placed beside me, one wrapped in blue and the other in pink. One baby slept deeply with a tiny fist clenched. The other had wide dark eyes open, staring curiously at the world. My heart melted at once. Xiao Yan carefully reached out and touched the little fist in the blue swaddle. His own fingers were rough and calloused. Beside the baby's soft, pale fist, the contrast was so stark that my heart ached. Yunning, he said hoarsely. Thank you. For what? For giving me all of this. His voice was very low, almost as though he were speaking to himself. When I came back from the frontier, I thought this was how my whole life would be. I thought I would live alone in a cold, quiet house until I died, without even someone to burn memorial paper for me afterward. Then heaven let me meet you. He raised his head. There was no shield over his emotions now. Everything was open before me. I am not some iron-willed general. I am only Xiao Yan, a man whom fate had handed a death sentence, and whom you pulled back from the gates of death. He went down on one knee beside the bed, took my hand and rested his forehead against its back. Shen Yunning, what I owe you in this life, I will repay with my life. My tears fell too. This man usually spoke pitifully little. Today, however, he had said so much, and every word seemed drawn directly from his heart. Who asked for your life? I wiped my tears and deliberately frowned at him. If you die, who will help me raise the children? Who will bring me tea and water? Who will get up in the middle of the night to soothe our daughter? He lifted his head. A foolish smile appeared on his tear-streaked face. I will do all of it. Whatever you ask me to do, I will do. When news of the twins spread, the capital exploded with excitement. The wife of General Xiao had given birth to twins, a boy and a girl. Those who had openly and secretly claimed that the child was not Xiao Yan's all fell silent. One child they could claim might not be his, but twins? Surely they could not say both were not. More importantly, the baby strongly resembled Xiao Yan. The boy especially looked like a miniature version of his father, with strong brows and bright eyes, already carrying a hint of his father's bold, martial air. Visitors came from morning until night to congratulate us. The threshold was trampled down 3 times by the constant traffic. Each time Steward Xiao repaired it, he laughed so hard he could barely close his mouth and said it was the happiest repair work of his life. My father came too, bringing my elder brothers. The moment Lord Shen saw the babies and the wet nurses, his eyes lit up. My grandson and granddaughter. He rubbed his hands eagerly. Come, let grandfather hold you. He reached for the baby in blue, but my eldest brother, Shen Yunwen, stopped him. Father, wait. Let me hold him first. I'm his uncle. My second brother, Shen Yunwu, immediately objected. Why should you go first? I come right after you. I want to hold him too. Father and sons began arguing over the babies in the courtyard like children fighting over sweets. Xiao Yan stood nearby, his expression darkening. Those are my children, he said slowly. No one listened. Father, after you hold the young master, the young lady is mine. No, no, the little girl looks too much like Yanning did as a child. I want to hold her longer. Isn't it my turn yet? Xiao Yan's face became darker and darker. He quietly moved to my side and lowered his voice. Why do I feel as though the children we had are no longer ours? I burst out laughing. How many years had I once longed for a scene like this? All through childhood, in the Shen family's side courtyard, I had been almost invisible. No one cared what I thought. No one asked whether I was living well. Yet today, the Shen family crowded around my children, unable to stop smiling, and I stood beneath the corridor beside the person who treated me better than anyone else in the world. Xiao Yan watched the chaos and sighed. When I fought wars, I used to think taking a fortified city was difficult. Now I know the hardest thing in the world is getting my children back from my father-in-law and my brothers-in-law. He hesitated, then turned to me with complete seriousness. Should I deploy troops and surround them? You dare, I glared at him. He touched his nose and fell silent with an aggrieved expression. My heart felt both bittersweet and warm. This man commanded 100,000 troops. Yet in his own courtyard, with his father-in-law and brothers-in-law fighting him for the babies, he could only stand to one side, looking aggrieved and pitifully beg me for help. Who would have imagined it? On the twins' one-month celebration, the general's residence was hung with lanterns and filled with guests. Xiao Yan personally carried the two swaddled babies before the entire hall and said something that left everyone speechless. You have all seen them. These are my children, a son and a daughter. I have both. From now on, if anyone still says that I, Xiao Yan, cannot father children, let them come to the general's residence and see for themselves whether these two children look like mine. The whole hall broke into laughter. Someone called out, General Xiao, no one can say that anymore. Madam has given you twins. If she gives you another pair one day, the general's residence will truly be bustling. Xiao Yan glanced at me and, unusually, looked embarrassed. My father sat in a place of honor holding his granddaughter and refusing to let anyone else take her. His face was creased with smiles. Good, good. My grandson and granddaughter, a perfect pair, one boy and one girl. Heaven sent blessings. My eldest brother immediately exposed him. Father, that is not what you said years ago. When Yanning was born, you barely looked at her. Lord Shen's smile froze. He coughed twice and answered awkwardly, Times change. Yanning is now the general's wife. Naturally, her children are precious. That sentence stirred an old bitterness inside me. Yes, times had changed. Once I had been the overlooked concubine-born daughter of the Shen household. Now I was mistress of the general's residence. When I was born, hardly anyone cared. Now my children drew the attention of the entire capital. The difference was not that I had suddenly become another person. It was that I had married the right man. I turned toward Xiao Yan. He was holding our son and awkwardly adjusting the baby's position. His expression as serious as if arranging troops for battle because he was afraid the child might be uncomfortable. Sensing my gaze, he looked up and smiled at me. Red banquet candles glowed behind him. His smile was impossibly warm. I suddenly remembered the face I had seen when he lifted my wedding veil. Cold, distant, pale. Back then I thought I would spend my life quietly and somewhat lonely in the general's residence. Instead, heaven gave me the most unexpected surprise. Heaven gave me a son and a daughter. Heaven gave me the best husband I could have imagined. And heaven gave me a complete life I had never dared to ask for. After the banquet ended and the guests left, I stood in the courtyard looking up at the full moon. Xiao Yan came over and settled a cloak around my shoulders. The night is cool. Do not stay outside too long. I leaned against him. Xian, what should we name our daughter? He thought for a moment. Xiaonian. Nianan? To remember what should never be forgotten, and to wish her peace year after year. And our son? Xiaonuo. Shonwo? To keep every promise I made to you, he said. Not to let you suffer, not to let anyone bully you, to spend my whole life keeping you safe. My nose stung again. Moonlight spilled like water over the courtyard. I rested in his arms and listened to the faint sounds from farther away. The babies crying, the wet nurses soothing them, maids walking through the corridors, and the night wind rustling through the parasol tree leaves. Together those sounds were the most beautiful music I had ever heard. I remembered when my birth mother was alive. On autumn nights, she liked to hold me on the threshold and comb my hair. Ninger, she once told me, women do not need to chase endless wealth and glory in this life. What matters is meeting someone who notices when you are cold, and when you are warm, someone who truly cares for you. Mother, can you see me now? I met him. He is truly good to me, so good that all the hardships and grievances I suffered before now feel worth it. After the twins' one-month celebration, an imperial edict arrived. The emperor had personally written the edict, granting me the rank of a third-rank titled lady and bestowing formal ceremonial honors, including a phoenix coronet and embroidered ceremonial stole, together with 1,000 taels of gold and 100 bolts of brocade. The eunuch who proclaimed the decree smiled broadly. His Majesty said that General Xiao has guarded the frontier for many years and rendered distinguished service to the realm. Madame Xiao is virtuous and gracious, and by continuing the Xiao family line she has rendered merit to the realm. His Majesty personally approved this honor. No one at court dared object. I knelt to receive the decree, holding the bright yellow imperial silk in both hands and feeling the immense weight it carried. A titled lady. From a concubine-born daughter to an imperially honored wife, it had taken me 19 years to walk this road. Xiao Yan stood behind me. After the eunuch left, he helped me to my feet and looked at the decree. His eyes were slightly red. "Why are you crying?" I asked with a smile. "I'm happy," he said. "Yunning, no one can look down on you anymore." When his own injustice had been cleared, he had not cried. Yet now his eyes reddened because I had received an imperial title. I rose onto my toes and wiped the corner of his eye. "Fool, I was never afraid of people looking down on me. I was afraid only that I might not be worthy of you." He took my hand and pressed it against his chest. "From now on, if anyone dares say you are not worthy of me, send them to ask me directly." 3 days after the honor was granted, another unexpected visitor came to the general's residence. My elder sister, Shen Yunlan. She did not enter. After Xiao Yan had dismissed her the previous time, perhaps even she understood. She no longer had the face to cross our threshold. She only stood beside the stone lion outside the gate. She wore an old dress faded from washing, her hair twisted up carelessly. She looked utterly down and out. I happened to be returning from an errand and met her there. Our eyes met. At first she froze. Then her gaze fell on my ceremonial attire and her face tightened. My ceremonial robe was bright red, embroidered with gold phoenix patterns. Beside her washed-out old dress, the contrast was stark, like clouds above and mud below. "Younger sister Yunning," she said, her voice hoarse. "Congratulations." She forced out the congratulations with obvious difficulty. I inclined my head slightly. "Thank you." She bit her lip. "May I speak with you for a moment?" I told Queer and the guards to step farther away. "Go ahead." Yunlan looked at me, her eyes slowly reddening. "Do you know what happened after I fled the wedding? I went to Jiangnan and married a wealthy merchant. I thought I had found a good life, but he loved gambling. In less than a year he lost the family fortune and left us buried in debt. I have nothing now." As she spoke, her eyes kept returning to my ceremonial robe. There was regret there, resentment, jealousy, and more than anything the grayness of someone who had finally accepted what could no longer be changed. "Yunning," she said, suddenly. "If I had married into this residence back then, would I be the one wearing those clothes now?" I looked at her. This was my elder sister. Even now she was not thinking about what she had done wrong. She was only envying the honor and wealth I had gained. "No," I said calmly. She stared at me. "If you had become Xiao Yan's wife, you would not be who I am today. Because you could not see what was good in him. You would have resented him for not giving you children. You would have resented him for neglecting you. You would have resented that you could not hold your head high before your sisters. You would not have stayed all night beside him when his old wound reopened. You would not have investigated the truth of the old diagnosis. You would not have held his hand and told him that you were not afraid of being held back." I looked directly at her. "You could not have done those things, because from the beginning you did not see him as your husband. You saw him only as a stepping stone to wealth and status." Shen Yunlan's face went completely white. My words seemed to cut into her heart one by one. "Yunning, you have changed," she murmured. "You were not like this before." "I was always like this," I said. "Before, no one gave me the chance to speak." I did not say anything more. I turned and walked through the gate of the general's residence. Behind me came Yunlan's muffled sobbing, but I did not look back. Some roads are chosen by the person who walks them. Once you choose, you must bear the result. Life in the general's residence changed completely after the 2 little ones arrived. One morning, while I was nursing our daughter, noise erupted outside. "Master Shen, you came again?" The general said today is his turn to hold the children. My father's voice answered at once. "What do you mean his turn? I am their grandfather. Must I stand in line to see my granddaughter?" Then one of my brothers cut in. "So what if you are grandfather? I am their uncle." "Father, you held them all day yesterday. Today is my turn." "Both of you stop arguing. Where is that brat Xiao Yan? Is he the one making you block me?" I carried my daughter outside and found my father and my 2 elder brothers arguing in the courtyard. Xiao Yan stood under the corridor holding our son, looking extremely pleased with himself. The moment he saw me, he walked over and whispered, "Before dawn I had Steward Xiao lock the rear courtyard gate. Even if they tried climbing the wall, they could not get in." His face plainly said, "I won." I did not know whether to laugh or cry. "Xiao Yan, that is my father and my brothers." "I know," he said righteously, "but the children are mine." "I gave birth to them, did you?" I asked. "I contributed," he said with perfect seriousness. He looked so smug that I finally burst out laughing. The battle over who got to hold the babies did not end until sunset. Lord Shen ultimately relied on his status as father-in-law and managed to take our daughter from Xiao Yan's arms. Xiao Yan was furious but did not dare quarrel seriously with his father-in-law, so he took our son into the study, locked the door, and refused to come out. When I entered carrying tea, I found him sitting behind the desk with the baby in his arms, muttering quietly. I moved closer and nearly laughed so hard I dropped the cup. "Little brat, remember this," he was telling our son. "Your father helped make you. Your mother is mine and your sister is mine too. No one gets to take any of you away. Understand?" The baby understood nothing. He waved his little fist and bopped his father in the face. Xiao Yan touched the spot, then nodded approvingly. "Good. Strong fist. When you grow up, you can be a general like your father." The days were noisy and full of tiny, ordinary troubles. They were also more complete than anything I had ever dared imagine. One night, after both children had fallen asleep, Xiao Yan and I sat side by side on the stone bench in the courtyard. A full moon hung above us and a pot of freshly brewed Longjing tea sat before us. "Are you tired?" he asked. "No." I shook my head. "I only feel that time passes too quickly. In the blink of an eye, the children have already reached their 1-month celebration. Before long, they will be running all over the place. Let them run. The general's residence is large enough." After a quiet moment, he spoke again. "Yunning, do you remember our wedding day?" "Of course. That night when I lifted the veil and saw you for the first time." His voice became light and gentle. "You sat there so quietly. Unlike others, you did not panic, cry, or show fear. I remember thinking that this girl was different from everyone else." I turned to look at him. His profile was handsome in the moonlight, its lines distinct yet softened. "I was terribly cold to you then, wasn't I?" "Very. I'm sorry. There is no need to apologize. At that time I did not yet know that someone who looked so cold could be the gentlest person underneath." He turned and smiled. "Yunning, do you know what I regret most?" "What?" "That on our wedding night I did not look longer at the girl sitting on the bridal bed. She was so beautiful and I wasted the moment pretending to be cold. What a loss." I reached to twist his ear. He laughed and dodged, then pulled me into his arms. The night breeze moved through the leaves of the parasol trees. Frogs called in the distance. Faint beats marking the night watch carried from far away like the rhythm of a long song. Xiao Yan lowered his head and kissed my forehead. "Yunning, have I done everything I promised you?" I thought about it. He had promised not to let me suffer. He kept that promise. He had promised not to let others bully me. He kept that promise. He had promised I would never regret it. He kept that promise too. "You have," I said. "Good." He smiled, moonlight reflected in his eyes, his expression impossibly gentle. "I, Xiao Yan, have spent my life amid war, riding from one battlefield to another. I have killed countless enemies and saved countless lives, but the greatest achievement of my life was marrying you." I rested against him and thought my life was already complete enough. I did not know that heaven still had one more surprise prepared for us. The following autumn, when the osmanthus trees were fragrant, I began feeling nauseated again. This time Xiao Yan understood before I did. He rushed out to summon Imperial Physician Zhang so quickly that when he returned, one foot had a shoe and the other did not. Physician Zhang examined my pulse, stroked his beard, and looked at us with open admiration. "Congratulations, General." "Congratulations, Madam." "Madam is with child." Xiao Yan stood in the doorway, one foot bare. His expression moved from nervousness to surprise, from surprise to disbelief, and finally into smug, unrestrained delight. Then he turned and ran outside. "I'm going to tell father-in-law," he shouted as he ran. "Let him try fighting me for the children, again. Now there's another one on the way. Let's see whether he can still keep up." I watched him go and laughed until tears came to my eyes. Our two little ones were already able to stand while holding the edge of the bed, babbling and smiling at me. I rested a hand over my still flat abdomen. Life was becoming livelier and livelier. Looking back over the road we had walked during that year and more, there had been anxiety on my wedding day, cautious testing after the marriage, the startled flutter of first affection, anger and hurt when others questioned us, relief when the truth was uncovered, the overwhelming pain of childbirth, and happiness beyond words when I first saw our children. Through all of it stood the same man, changing from coldness to tenderness, from distance to deep devotion. He had returned alive from the frontier believing he was destined to grow old alone. He was not, he had me. He had children. He had a home full of laughter. And I had changed too, from a concubine-born daughter who lived at another person's mercy into the mistress of the general's residence, his wife, and the mother of our children. We both changed because of each other and became better versions of ourselves. I finally understood that the best kind of love does not have to be earth-shaking, grand, or dramatic. Rather it is this: you arrived, and I happened to be there. We supported each other through storms, watched the sky clear together, and then lived the rest of our lives in ordinary peace and happiness. That was enough. Thank you for supporting Panda. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Your support helps us bring you more amazing stories. Now, let's begin story 2. I was reborn on the very day Mother was about to take my cousin in as her adopted daughter. This time, I made the thoughts in Su Wanru's heart appear above her head. The moment Mother saw that Wanru had poisoned her own mother long ago, she immediately pulled back the jade pendant she had been about to give her. In my previous life, I died during the third heavy snowfall on the road of exile. Before I died, I was still clutching the half of the jade pendant Mother had left me. It had already shattered, and one jagged edge had cut into my palm. Blood seeped between my fingers and dotted the snow beneath me. The officers escorting us had long since gone ahead. Father had died in the imperial prison. My elder brother had fallen at the frontier. Mother, coughing blood, had collapsed in my arms. Only when she was on the verge of death did she tell me a truth that had come far too late. Jiaoning, your aunt did not die of illness. Wanru admitted herself that she had poisoned her. I still remembered exactly how the light went out of Mother's eyes in that moment. She had cherished Su Wanru for 7 full years. She gave Wanru the status of a young lady of the Marquis household, prepared a dowry for her, and even scolded me again and again for not being generous enough simply because Wanru said, "Cousin doesn't like me." Yet Su Wanru had not only poisoned her own mother, she later used the same poison, little by little, to take Mother's life as well. In the end, she handed the Shen family's military records to the second prince, and framed Father for secretly colluding with the northern enemy. Our entire household was convicted, while she climbed over the ruins of the Shen family and became the second prince's most favored secondary consort. When I closed my eyes for the last time, I could still hear what she had said softly while standing outside the prison cart. "Cousin, you had too much. I merely took back what should have belonged to me." But when I opened my eyes again, I did not hear wind and snow. I heard a hall filled with laughter. Wanru has lost her mother. The poor child has no one to rely on. If Madame is willing to accept her as an adopted daughter, it would also honor the bond between the two sisters. My eyes snapped open. Warm incense drifted through the room. Beaded curtains swayed gently. Mother sat in the main hall, a smile still lingering at the corners of her eyes, holding a translucent white jade pendant in her hands. Su Wanru knelt before her in mourning clothes, her shoulders trembling faintly. "Aunt, I am already endlessly grateful that you are willing to take me in. How could I dare ask for the status of an adopted daughter?" She said she did not dare, yet her hand was already raised. Another half-inch, and she would have taken the jade pendant. A chill went through me. I remembered this day. It was the 6th day of the 3rd month in the 23rd year of Jinghe. After observing 100 days of mourning, Su Wanru came to the capital to seek refuge in the Marquis of Ningyuan's household. Out of guilt toward her late sister, Mother publicly took Wanru in as an adopted daughter. From that day forward, she could attend the banquets of noble households as the second young lady of the Ningyuan Marquis manor. And from that same day forward she began taking everything from me, one piece at a time: my mother, my engagement, and eventually the entire Shen family. I could not let her have them again. I shot to my feet. Every guest in the hall turned toward me. Mother's hand froze halfway through the motion and she stared at me in surprise. "Jiaoning?" Su Wanru's hand also stiffened. A trace of resentment flashed through her eyes before they immediately filled with tears. "Cousin, if you dislike me, then I simply won't become Aunt's adopted daughter. Aunt, please don't hurt your relationship with your own daughter because of me." Her voice was full of grievance, and she shrank backward slightly. It had been exactly like this in my previous life. The more she appeared to yield, the more aggressive I seemed. Sure enough, low whispers had already begun around the banquet. "Eldest Miss Shen is far too intolerant. She's only a motherless cousin. She can't possibly threaten eldest Miss Shen's position." I ignored them, my gaze fixed on the jade pendant in Mother's hand. It was the heart-illuminating jade, a Zhang family heirloom passed down from one legitimate daughter to the next. In my previous life, Mother had pressed it into my hand before she died. By then it had broken in two. I had heard that Suwanru shattered it while fighting over the 100 herb secret compendium. Now, however, it was still perfectly intact. Almost without thinking, I reached out and grasped Mother's wrist. The jade pendant suddenly turned scorching hot between our palms. A sharp pain ran up my arm and struck straight into my chest. For an instant, the endless snowy wasteland from my previous life flashed before my eyes. I gritted my teeth. Only one thought remained. Let Mother see what Suwanru truly was, let everyone see. The next moment, the entire hall erupted in startled gasps. Above Suwanru's head, a line of blood-red words slowly appeared. This foolish woman is every bit as easy to deceive as my mother was. Suwanru's smile froze. She looked up, unable to see the words above her own head. She could only tell from everyone else's expressions that something was terribly wrong. A second line appeared immediately after it. Once I take the jade pendant, I'll be the second young lady of the Marquis household. Then I'll go to the Zhang family's medicine storehouse and find the 100 herb secret compendium. After that, I'll think of a way to get the Shen family's military records. Mother's face turned paler with every word. What is this? Her voice trembled. Suwanru hurriedly shook her head. Aunt, I don't know anything. The more panicked she became, the faster the words above her head appeared. My mother wanted to take me away from the capital before she died and ruin everything. She refused to hand over the prescription, so I had no choice but to add 1,000 soul powder to the ginseng soup she drank every day. When she died, she was still holding my hand and asking why. Why are there so many whys? If she didn't die, how could I come to the Marquis household and become a young lady? The jade pendant slipped from Mother's hand and struck the table. She looked as though she had been slapped across the face, all color draining from her lips. Ru Wei, that was my aunt's name. Suwanru finally realized what everyone could see. She frantically reached over her head, sobbing and shouting, "It's fake! All of it is fake! Cousin must have used some kind of sorcery." I did not look at her. I only looked at Mother. In my previous life when she died, her hair had turned completely white and she had wasted away terribly. Yet now she was sitting alive and whole before me, her hair still black, with only a few faint lines on her face. My nose stung, and I nearly cried in front of everyone. But I could not cry. Not yet, Mother. I supported her firmly. Take the jade pendant back first. Mother seemed to wake from a nightmare. She snatched up the pendant and clenched it tightly in her hand. The token of adoption that had already been extended toward Suwanru was withdrawn without the slightest hesitation. Today's adoption is cancelled. Every word sounded forced from Mother's throat. Suwanru's face went white. Aunt, don't call me that. Mother's voice suddenly rose. It was the first time I had ever seen my gentle mother lose control like this. Her eyes were filled with anguish, yet she stood firmly in front of me as if shielding me. Until this matter is investigated, you are forbidden to leave the guest courtyard. Suwanru collapsed to the floor. The surrounding guests wore all kinds of expressions. Some were frightened, some suspicious, and some had already backed away quietly, as though she were some kind of ominous apparition. I knew that a few mysterious lines appearing out of nowhere were not enough to convict her. She would recover quickly. She would play the victim, turn the accusation back on me, and use Gumingheng and the second prince's influence to destroy the evidence. So I did not press my advantage. Instead, I turned toward the senior housekeeper beside Mother. Seal the guest courtyard. Inventory every trunk, medicinal ingredient, and letter the Su family sent with her. Nothing is to go missing. Especially the medicine chest Aunt Ru Wei left behind. Suwanru jerked her head up. This time, no complete sentence appeared above her head. Only a brief line of dark text flashed by. That medicine chest must never fall into their hands. I saw it. Mother saw it too. We exchanged a glance. I took her cold hand and said softly, Mother, whether Aunt truly died of illness or was killed will soon have an answer. And this time, I will not let anyone destroy the evidence. The adoption banquet ended in bitter disorder. Less than half an hour after the guests left, Gumingheng arrived at the Marquis manor. He entered in a hurry, his brows drawn with reproach. Joning, what exactly were you trying to do today? Standing outside Mother's courtyard, I heard those words and almost laughed. In my previous life, Gumingheng and I had been engaged for 10 years. I had always believed he was gentle, proper, and reasonable. Only after Suwanru appeared did I understand that his so-called gentleness existed only because no one had ever gone against him. He liked her not because his feelings ran especially deep, but because she knew how to look at him with admiration and say softly, Young Master Gu is the most capable. I, on the other hand, had never been willing to make myself small merely to become the appendage. Young Master Gu receives news quickly. I did not invite him inside. I simply stood beneath the corridor and looked at him. Something happened inside the women's quarters of the Marquis Manor, less than half an hour ago, and you already know about it. Gu Mingheng's expression tightened. There were many guests today. I heard people talking about it. What is strange about that? What is strange is that you not only know the adoption was cancelled, but also know that Wanru was confined to the guest courtyard. My gaze dropped to the blue-green sachet hanging from his waist. An orchid was embroidered on it with dense, careful stitches. It was identical to the one Su Wanru had given him in my previous life. When did young Master Gu become so close to my cousin? Gu Mingheng instinctively covered the sachet with one hand. She came to the capital alone. I merely helped her a little for your sake. For my sake? I repeated the words lightly. Then why did I not know that you arranged the carriage that brought her to the capital, and even sent a Gu family steward to meet her at the city gate? His expression changed. In my previous life, Su Wanru had once proudly told me that she and Gu Mingheng were already exchanging letters before she came to the capital. I had not believed her then. Now seeing his reaction, I knew I had guessed correctly. Gu Mingheng quickly regained his composure. You had people investigate me? Are you worth that much trouble? I asked calmly. He looked as though I had deeply insulted him. Joning, I know you dislike Wanru, but she has just lost her mother. The strange phenomenon today is of unknown origin. How can you decide that she murdered her own mother based only on a few mysterious lines of writing? I have not decided anything. That is why I am investigating. I stepped aside, revealing the servants in the courtyard, who were registering and sealing the items that had been taken into custody. Yet before anything has been investigated, young Master Gu has already rushed here to stand up for her. Gu Mingheng frowned. She is an orphaned young woman confined in the guest courtyard of your manor. Who knows what kind of mistreatment she might suffer? The affairs of the Marquis household are not yours to decide. Mother's voice came from inside the courtyard. Supported by Nanny Shou, she walked out. In just half an hour, Mother seemed to have aged several years, but the confusion in her eyes had cleared. Gu Mingheng quickly bowed. Anshen, Wanru is still your own niece. Precisely because she is my own niece, I must find out how Ruwei died. Mother looked directly at him. Young Master Gu, if you truly care about her, then perhaps you can explain why you knew in advance what days she would arrive in the capital, and why you prepared her travel permit for her. Gu Mingheng's breathing faltered. He had clearly not expected Mother to know that as well. It was only a small favor. If it was merely a small favor, then hand over the related correspondence. Mother's tone remained gentle, but it left no room for refusal. If Wanru is innocent, I will apologize to her myself, but if she truly caused Ruwei's death, Mother paused, then no one will be able to protect her. In the end, Gu Mingheng did not get to see Su Wanru. When he left, the look he gave me was icy. As we passed each other, he lowered his voice. Jiaoning, you're going too far. Don't regret this later. I stopped. In my previous life, I had been terrified of disappointing him. I feared he would say I was not virtuous enough. I feared the Gu family would cancel our engagement. I feared becoming a laughingstock in the capital. Only after dying once did I understand that engagement was not something that could save your life. Sometimes it was simply a stone tied around your ankle. Gu Mingheng, I said without turning around. I will not be the one who regrets this. Aunt Ruwei had left behind 6 travel chests. Her clothes, jewelry, account books, and letters were all straightforward. Only one medicine chest was tightly secured with a small bronze lock. Su Wanru claimed the key had been lost. I ordered the servants to pry it open. More than 10 porcelain bottles stood inside. Most contained ordinary medicines for calming the nerves or relieving coughs. Mother personally examined them one by one. She had been born into the Jiang family and had studied medicine from childhood. Although she stopped treating patients publicly after marrying into the Marquis household, she had never abandoned her medical knowledge. These medicines are fine. After saying that, her gaze settled on the bottom of the chest. A layer of dark velvet had been laid there. I ran my fingers over it and felt that the edge was slightly raised. Qingdai, bring me a knife. I picked open the seam of the velvet. Sure enough, beneath it was an extremely thin false panel. When the panel was lifted, half of a prescription and a packet of blackened medicinal dregs fell out. Mother's hands began trembling after a single glance. This is Ruwei's handwriting. Only half the prescription remained. Several herbs for nourishing the body and calming the nerves were still visible, but one medicinal name near the end had been blacked out with ink. I held the prescription up beside the window. When sunlight passed through the paper, 2 faint characters could be seen beneath the ink. Thousand Soul. Before Mother died in my previous life, an elderly physician had said that the poison in her body was extremely unusual. At first it caused only drowsiness and heart palpitations. Later she began coughing blood and gradually lost her sight, and finally her entire body weakened beyond recovery. Those symptoms were exactly the same as Aunt Ruwei's before her death. Thousand Soul Powder. Mother's voice was barely audible. That is a forbidden medicine of the Jiang family. Your grandfather ordered every copy of the formula destroyed while he was still alive. How could Ruwei? She could not finish. I knew what she was afraid of. If Aunt Ruwei had truly died from Thousand Soul Powder, then whoever had access to such a poison had to be connected to the Jiang family. I wrapped the medicinal dregs in clean oiled paper and ordered several trustworthy physicians to examine samples separately. At that moment, Qingdai reached into the false compartment again and pulled out a tiny piece of charred paper. Only half of a dark red mark remained on it. It resembled a bird spreading both wings. Mother did not recognize it. I did. In my previous life, the second prince's residence never used an official seal on its most secret correspondence. Instead, a two-winged dark bird was drawn in cinnabar. Jiaoning, have you seen this mark before? Mother had noticed my expression. I could not tell her that I had seen it in my previous life. I once saw a similar pattern in a book Gu Mingheng sent me. I gave her only the safest part of the truth. Mother fell silent for a moment but did not question me further. Too much had happened in one day. Perhaps she had already noticed something unusual about me, yet she still chose to trust me first. That belated trust made my chest ache. After nightfall, Mother stayed in the medicine room to sort through Ruwei's belongings. I did not return to my own courtyard. Instead, I had Qingdai move a couch outside the storeroom. Miss, are you truly going to keep watch here yourself? Suwanru will not simply sit and wait for us to uncover the truth. I looked toward the black courtyard gate. The medicine chest contains what she fears most. She will send someone. Qingdai tightened her grip on the wooden staff in her hands. After the second watch, a faint landing sound came from beyond the wall. A dark figure crept along the wall toward the storeroom. The intruder did not search the medicine chest. Instead, she pulled out a fire striker and tossed it directly toward the corner where the travel chests had been stacked. The instant flames leapt up, I pulled the rope beside me. Buckets of water we had prepared in advance tipped from the rafters. Water crashed down, extinguishing the fire and soaking the black-clad intruder at the same time. Guards rushed in from all sides and pinned her firmly to the ground. Qingdai tore off the cloth covering her face. It was Chuntao, Su Wanru's maid. Even after being dragged before me, she continued to struggle. I was only worried my mistress would be humiliated. I wanted to burn those harmful things and protect my mistress. I crouched in front of her. A brand new gold bracelet gleamed on her wrist. A maid who earns 500 copper coins a month. Where did you get enough money for gold? Chuntao's face changed instantly. I was about to order a search when hurried footsteps came from outside the storeroom. A matron from the guest courtyard stumbled toward us. Eldest miss, something has happened. Miss Su vomited blood and fainted. She says you poisoned her. I stood and looked at the drenched Chuntao. What Su Wanru did best was turn her own crimes into someone else's. This time, she intended to use the same trick again. Unfortunately for her, I was not the one who had fallen into the trap tonight. Su Wanru lay on the bed deathly pale, with blood at the corner of her mouth. Servants knelt all over the room. When I entered, she struggled to prop herself up and tears immediately rolled down her face. Cousin, I know you resent me for staying in the Marquis household, but I already promised I would not become Aunt's adopted daughter, and I will not fight you for anything. Why are you still unwilling to let me go? She spoke weakly. On the table beside her stood a bowl of calming soup, half of it already consumed. The physician who had just checked her pulse looked grave. Miss Su has indeed been poisoned. Mother arrived as soon as she heard. She stopped at the doorway. Sumro looked as if she had seen her last hope and reached out while sobbing. Aunt, you're the only family I have left. If even you don't believe me, what reason do I have to keep living? In my previous life, Mother always softened whenever she said those words. This time, Mother simply stood at the doorway. She did not take Su Wanru's hand. First determine where the poison came from. Su Wanru's expression stiffened. Ruwei's death has not yet been investigated. Mother continued slowly. And tonight someone tried to set fire to her belongings. Wanru, I no longer dare trust even what I see with my own eyes. I can only trust evidence. Su Wanru cried even harder. She turned to me, looking as though she had suffered every injustice in the world. Cousin, the soup was delivered by someone from your courtyard. Who from my courtyard? She could not answer. The maid who delivered the medicine had already been brought outside. I recognized her. Her name was Kuiwei, a second-rank maid from Mother's courtyard. In my previous life, she had later been promoted into Su Wanru's personal service. Who told you to deliver the soup? Kuiwei knelt on the ground, trembling. Miss Qingdai, who serves eldest miss. Qingdai's face flushed with anger. Nonsense. I have been guarding the storeroom all night. Before she could continue shouting, Su Wanru asked weakly, then where were you before that? Qingdai faltered for an instant. I smiled. Bring them in. At my clap, 2 guards dragged Chuntao into the room. Her clothes were still dripping water, and the gold bracelet on her wrist was glaringly conspicuous beneath the lamplight. Qingdai and I were at the storeroom. We personally caught Chuntao trying to set it on fire. All 12 guards in the courtyard can testify. I walked to the bowl and smelled the remaining soup. As for this soup, since Kui claims Qingdai ordered her to deliver it, then let us first ask exactly where she received Qingdai's supposed instruction. Kui's face turned white. Outside the kitchen, around 7:15 that evening. Qingdai entered the storeroom with me around 7:30, I said. She did not leave again after that. I looked toward the senior matron in the room. How many exits are there outside the kitchen? Only one side gate, eldest miss. Someone guards it every night. The matron on watch was summoned as well. She swore that, after 7 that evening, the only people who had passed through were Kuiwei and Chuntao, one after the other. Kui panicked completely. I remembered it wrong. Someone else passed the message. Who? I don't know. The moment she finished speaking, the jade pendant hidden inside my sleeve suddenly grew hot. The heat was weaker than the first time, but it still felt like flame pressed against my skin. I looked at Su Wanru. Her hand was hidden beneath the quilt, fingers gripping the bedsheet tightly. A line of black words slowly appeared above her head. As long as I insist Shen Jiaoning poisoned me, Aunt will soften eventually. Everyone in the room saw it. Su Wanru still did not know. She continued crying. I have never harmed anyone. Cousin, why must you force me like this? A second line surfaced. It's a pity Chuntao is so useless. She failed to burn the medicine chest. Fortunately, the voucher for collecting the medicine is hidden in the base of the incense burner. They'll never find it. My gaze moved to the bronze incense burner beside the bed. Su Wanru followed my eyes. Her face changed instantly. She suddenly threw off the quilt and lunged toward it, but Qingdai was faster and snatched up the burner. I pulled out my hairpin and lightly pried at the edge of its base. A thin bronze plate sprang loose. Inside was a tiny rolled slip of paper. It was a medicine collection voucher from the South City branch of Jishi Hall. The person who collected the medicine had written only one surname, Gu, and the date was exactly 1 month before Mother's sister died. The medicines themselves had been recorded under the names of ordinary tonics. The quantities and proportions were extremely strange. Mother took the voucher, her fingers trembling badly. Su Wanru finally noticed the way everyone was looking at her. She reached over her own head, then screamed in collapse. It's not true. You all saw it wrong. Shen Jiaoning is framing me. She's a monster. I walked up to her. You say I poisoned you. Then let the physician tell us exactly what poison you took. The physician had already examined the bowl again. He wiped the cold sweat from his forehead. The soup contains croton powder used to induce vomiting. The amount is very small. It would cause abdominal pain and vomiting, but it is not fatal. As for the blood at Miss Su's lips, she appears to have bitten the tip of her tongue and mixed the blood with what she vomited. The room fell silent. It was as if all the bones had been pulled from Su Wanru's body. She slumped onto the bed. Mother closed her eyes. When she opened them again, only disappointment remained. Su Wanru. It was the first time she had ever addressed my cousin by her full name. I originally thought that, even if those strange words today were of unknown origin, you were still Ruwei's only daughter. I was willing to give you a chance to prove yourself. But you sent someone to set a fire, bribed a maid, and then injured yourself to frame Jiaoning. How am I supposed to believe you now? Su Wanru crawled from the bed, crying, Aunt, I was forced into it. Young Master Gu said that as long as I stayed in the Marquis household, he would help me investigate Mother's death. I was afraid you would drive me away. I only lost my judgment for a moment. Even now she was trying to drag Gu Mingheng down with her while leaving herself a path of retreat. Mother did not let herself be led by Wanru's words again. The adoption is cancelled completely. From today onward, you are no longer the daughter I, Jiang Rulan, intended to adopt. Until the murder case is resolved, you are merely a guest from the Su family staying temporarily in the Marquis household. No one is allowed to see you without my permission. Su Wanru knelt stiffly on the floor. What she had lost was not merely a jade pendant. She had lost the status of a young lady of the Marquis household, the right to move freely among noble banquets, and the first step of a plan she had prepared for years. Mother turned and pulled me into her arms. She held me tightly, Zhongning. Mother was foolish before. My tears finally fell. In my previous life I had waited for those words until Mother died in my arms, yet never heard them. But I did not blame her. Su Wanru's greatest cruelty was not simply that she killed people. She knew how to seize the softest place in each person's heart and turn that softness into a blade. Mother felt guilty toward her younger sister. I had been obsessed with preserving my engagement. Father cared deeply about the family's reputation. My elder brother pitied the weak. In my previous life, Su Wanru had grasped every one of our weaknesses. In this life, I would pry her fingers away one by one. Early the next morning, 2 officials from the Court of Judicial Review arrived at the Marquis Manor. The young man leading them wore a dark official robe. His features were stern, and a silver badge identifying him as the court's deputy minister hung at his waist. After dismounting, he exchanged no pleasantries. He simply ordered someone to present a sealed wooden case. Last night, someone delivered a packet of medicinal drugs to the court and requested an examination. The coroner's preliminary findings show that, in addition to the expected ingredients, it contains an extremely rare slow-acting poison. He raised his eyes to me. His gaze was calm and sharp. Eldest Miss Shen, the poison in these drugs appears to come from the same source as the substance found in 3 sudden death cases involving capital officials within the past 6 months. I am Xiao Yan. The court has been ordered to investigate, and I asked the Shen family to cooperate. My heart gave a heavy beat as I looked at him. Xiao Yan. In my previous life, after the Shen family was convicted, he had been the only official in court to suggest that the military records used against us might have been forged. Unfortunately, he lacked sufficient evidence at the time. The second prince's faction joined forces to suppress him, and he was quickly stripped of authority over the investigation. In this life, he had appeared a full 3 years earlier. And the news he brought meant that Aunt Ruwei's death was not merely a murder within a private household. There was indeed a larger enemy behind Su Wanru. Xiao Yanqi did not believe in the mysterious thought text. At least, he refused to place such a supernatural event into an official case file. When Mother truthfully described everything that had happened at the adoption banquet, his expression remained calm. What Madame Shen saw may indeed have existed. But the court can decide a case only on physical evidence and testimony that can be verified. Mother's face turned slightly pale. Everyone in the hall saw those lines of writing. The guests can prove that they saw writing. They cannot prove that the content of that writing was necessarily true. He spoke coolly, almost without sentiment, but I was not angry. Instead, for the first time, I looked at him seriously. When the Shen family fell in my previous life, there had been no shortage of people in the capital willing to believe rumors. What had been missing were people willing to verify evidence. Deputy Minister Xiao is right. I placed the medicine chest, the dregs, the remaining prescription, and the medicine collection voucher on the table one by one. The strange writing can only show that Su Wanru is suspicious. If we want to prove what killed my aunt, where the poison came from, and who handled it, each link must be investigated separately. Xiao Yanxi glanced at me, and some of the scrutiny in his eyes faded. Where was this medicine chest found? In the 3rd trunk sent by the Su family. Who touched it before it was opened? The household steward, my mother, myself, and my personal maid. 2 matrons recorded the process from beginning to end. Did the medicinal dregs ever leave the Marquis household before they were sent to the court? Last night, one of my father's personal guards delivered them directly to the court. The wrapping was sealed with the private seal of our household. I handed him the registry. Xiao Yanqi flipped through several pages. Eldest Miss Shen seems to understand very well how evidence must be preserved. My fingertips tightened slightly. After father was imprisoned in my previous life, I had traveled again and again between the Ministry of Justice and the Court of Judicial Review, trying to prove that the military records were false. Every item I presented had been rejected for one reason or another. Uncertain origin, possible forgery, no witnesses. Only later did I understand that if the truth could not be proven, then, in the eyes of the law, it was no different from a lie. Because I do not want anyone to have another chance to say the Shen family is using its power to frame an orphaned girl, I answered. Xiao Yanqi did not ask further. The young man behind him opened the wooden case. I am Liu Lingfeng. The dregs contain aconite, datura, jade cicada slough, and a kind of purple root I have never seen before. Mother brought over a silver needle and an herb mortar and examined the ingredients carefully. The purple root should be yellow root. The Zhang family's medical records state that it is merely sedative when used alone. But if it is processed together with jade cicada slough, its medicinal nature changes. Liu Lingfeng's eyes lit up. Thousand soul powder? Mother looked up sharply. You know of it? We found half of a damaged prescription in the home of one of the deceased officials. Liu Lingfeng pulled a copied sheet from the case. The handwriting on it was almost identical to the surviving half of Aunt Ru Wei's prescription. Xiao Yan said, the 3 dead men were a deputy director of the Imperial Medical Institute, a director in the Ministry of Revenue, and an administrator of a capital grain warehouse. Before their deaths, all 3 had been involved in reforms overseen by the second prince. But we have found no direct evidence connecting the cases to the prince's residence. That deputy director had once treated his mother 12 years earlier. His voice did not change when he mentioned his late mother, but his fingers whitened slightly around the case file. I suddenly understood why he was personally pursuing this poison. It was not only official duty, it was personal to him as well. I looked down at the case materials. Aunt Ru Wei died only 2 months ago. If the murderer used the same poison in both old and recent cases, then Thousand Soul Powder was never truly lost. Someone has been secretly producing it all along. Correct. Xiao Yanci closed the file. Therefore, from this moment onward, Su Wanru cannot be watched only by the Marquis household. Mother immediately tensed. You intend to take her to the court? At present the evidence is insufficient, and she has no formal criminal record. Taking her into custody by force may alert whoever is behind her. He paused. She may remain here, but the court will assign people to watch her secretly. He said watch, not protect. I understood what he meant. He wanted to leave Su Wanru in place and use her as bait to draw out the larger fish. Agreed, I said without hesitation. Mother looked at me anxiously. I lightly squeezed her hand. Keeping her here is more useful than making her disappear. A faint shift passed through Xiao Yanci's eyes. The examination continued for the entire day. That afternoon, Qingdai found an entry in an old gift register from the Gu family. Half a year earlier, Gu Mingheng had used my name to collect a batch of calming medicinal ingredients from the South City branch of Jishi Hall. The order slip bore his private seal at the bottom. It matched the seal on the voucher Su Wanru had hidden exactly. Gu Mingheng claimed he had collected medicine for me, but I had not been ill at the time. I handed the slip to Xiao Yanqi, and he never delivered any of those medicines to the Marquis household. Xiao Yanqi carefully compared the seals. A private seal alone cannot prove he handled the matter personally. I know. I looked at him. I will make him admit it himself. Xiao Yanqi raised his eyes. How? The Gu family is holding a flower viewing banquet 3 days from now. Madame Gu sent an invitation yesterday, asking Mother and me to attend so they can use the occasion to calm the rumors from the adoption banquet. I looked at the name on the order slip. They think I am afraid of losing the engagement, and even more afraid of damage to my reputation. As long as Gu Mingheng believes I still intend to marry him, he will explain this voucher on his own. Xiao Yanci was silent for a moment. You intend to use your engagement as bait? No. I placed the betrothal token the Gu family had sent onto the table. I am going there to end the engagement. He seemed surprised by how decisively I said it. Does the Marquise of Ningyuan agree? Father does not know yet. Eldest Miss Shen. His brows drew together slightly. An engagement between noble families is not a game. So Gu Mingheng is allowed to be engaged to me while secretly collecting medicine and arranging travel for another woman? I looked directly at him. Deputy Minister Xiao decides cases by evidence. I will decide my marriage the same way. The evidence I have now is already enough for me to know that he is not the man I want to marry. The wind outside brushed against the window paper. Xiao Yanci looked at me for a long moment, then suddenly pushed the order slip back toward me. This is your engagement. How you handle it is your decision. I will have the Gu family's medicine records investigated separately. He did not advise me to preserve appearances. Nor did he tell me that a woman would ruin her reputation by ending an engagement. He simply returned the choice that belonged to me, whole and untouched. Before leaving, Xiao Yanqi paused at the doorway. Eldest Miss Shen, I will not force you to explain what you do not wish to explain. But every piece of evidence you find, I will investigate to the end. I watched him walk into the rain. The wall that had blocked my heart for an entire lifetime seemed to be tapped lightly from the other side. It did not collapse, but for the first time, the echo that came back was not so cold. The Gu family's flower viewing banquet was lavish. The moment Mother and I entered the garden, the surrounding conversation stopped for a brief instant. The wives and young ladies glanced at me, then casually looked away. There was no need to guess. The strange incident at the adoption banquet had already spread throughout the capital. Some said I was jealous of my cousin and had deliberately hired a wandering occultist to perform sorcery. Others said Su Wanru carried an ominous fate, and that the accusation that she had caused her mother's death might actually be true. Madame Gu came forward with a smile. Rulan, this is only a misunderstanding between the children. Why let it become such a serious matter? She affectionately pulled mother toward a seat, then beckoned to me. Jiaoning, Mingheng has been talking about you for days. He only spoke for Wanru because he pitied an orphaned girl. Don't stay angry with him. I glanced around the garden. The Gu family had invited nearly every prominent noblewoman in the capital. This banquet was not truly about viewing flowers. It was meant to force me to lower my head in public. If I admitted today that I had misunderstood Su Wanru, the Gu family could preserve its engagement with the Shen family. Gu Mingheng's secret assistance to Wanru could then be explained away as nothing more than temporary kindness. Madame Gu was still smiling. For a woman, the most important virtues are kindness and tolerance. Once you and Mingheng marry, you cannot damage your relationship as husband and wife over some orphaned girl outside the family. Madame Gu is right, I said with a smile. That is why I brought something especially for today. I had Qingdai present a brocade box. Satisfaction flashed through Madame Gu's eyes. She probably thought I had brought an apology gift, but when the box opened, there was only one pale jade clasp inside. It was the Gu family's ancestral betrothal token. The garden became completely silent. Gu Mingheng strode out of the flower hall. Shen Zhoning, what is the meaning of this? Ending the engagement. I said only those words. He stared as if he had not heard correctly. Say that again. Young Master Gu and I have not completed the formal marriage rites. Our two families have only exchanged betrothal tokens. I placed the jade clasp on the table. Today, with elders from both families present, I return the token. From this moment onward, the engagement is cancelled. Madame Gu's smile vanished. Zhoning, marriage is a major matter. How can you act so willfully? I am not the one acting willfully. I had Qingdai present the medicine shop order slip, the collection voucher and copies of the travel records. Xiao Yanqi had obtained the archived copies from the city gate relay station. They clearly recorded that Gu Mingheng had used the name of his father's office at the Ministry of Rights to apply for a temporary travel permit for Su Wanru and had sent a Gu family carriage outside the city to bring her into the capital. Young Master Gu said he merely helped my cousin for my sake. I looked around at everyone. But when these things happened, I did not even know when Su Wanru would arrive in the capital. Gu Mingheng's face darkened. She wrote to say she had nowhere to go. I was only helping an orphaned young woman. Then what about this medicine collection voucher? I pushed it in front of him. 1 month before my aunt died, someone used your private seal to collect from Jishi Hall the ingredients needed to prepare Thousand Soul Powder. For whom did you collect them? Gu Mingheng answered instinctively. Wanru only said her mother had insomnia and asked me to. He stopped abruptly in the middle of the sentence. A wave of hushed reactions passed through the garden. I smiled. So you admit that you personally collected the medicine for her? Gu Mingheng finally realized he had walked into my trap. I didn't know those medicines could be made into poison. Whether you knew is for the Court of Judicial Review to determine. I picked up the jade clasp. But it is already a fact that, while engaged to me, you secretly exchanged letters with another woman, arranged her carriage and travel documents, and collected medicinal ingredients for her behind my back. I looked at him. I am ending this engagement today not because I am jealous of Su Wanru, but because you are not worthy of me. Gu Mingheng stared as if seeing me for the first time. He had always believed that, no matter what he did, I would protect the dignity of our two families. After all, we had been engaged for years. After all, a woman who ended an engagement would always endure more criticism. What he did not know was that I had already died once. I had died while trying to preserve this very engagement. Madame Gu's face tightened. Does your father know about this? He does now. Father's voice came from outside the garden. Everyone rose and bowed. The Marquis of Ningyuan entered in his court robes, clearly having just returned from court. He walked to my side and first looked at the evidence on the table. Zhoning informed me by letter this morning that she intended to end the engagement. He turned to the Gu family. If the Gu family wants to know the reason, these documents are the reason. Madame Gu's face paled. Marquis, our two families have been close for many years. When young Master Gu lent his private seal to a suspect in a murder case, did he consider the friendship between our families? Father's voice was cold and firm. The engagement ends here. Gu Mingheng stepped forward. Uncle Shen, I was merely deceived. You are already 21. I turned toward him. You cannot blame someone else for deceiving you every time you make a mistake. You knew Su Wanru's relationship with me was complicated, yet you still hid her movements for her. Now a death is involved, and you claim you knew nothing. I looked directly into his eyes. Gumingheng, you wanted the resources of the Shen family, and you also wanted a delicate woman who looked at you with complete admiration. The world does not give people everything they want. His face shifted between anger and pallor. I released the jade clasp. It landed on the tabletop with a sharp click. Gumingheng stared at me, and for the first time panic appeared in his eyes. Not because he had lost me. Because he had lost the Shen family. Someone from the Gu family's second branch held an official post in the capital, because father had recommended him. The Ministry of Rights also needed father's cooperation on military supply documents this year. Once the engagement ended, those advantages naturally disappeared. Madame Gu understood the consequences even better than her son did. She immediately softened her voice. Zhouning, we can discuss this slowly. Mingheng was only confused for a moment. What young person never makes mistakes? Mother finally spoke. Madame Gu, my younger sister's death is still unexplained, and young Master Gu collected medicines for the primary suspect. That is not a mistake the Shen family can afford. Then she took my hand and led me away. When we stepped outside the Gu residence, the rain had begun again. A plain black carriage, without any family insignia, was parked outside. Xiao Yan stood beneath the eaves holding an official document. He had not entered the Gu residence, nor had he spoken a single word for me while I ended my engagement. Only after I came out did he hand a clean cloak to Qingdai. We found Nanny Zhou. My heart tightened. Nanny Zhou had served Aunt Ru Wei for many years. In my previous life, Su Wanru had claimed that after Aunt's death, Nanny Zhou stole money and ran away. Where is she? In an abandoned dye workshop in the south of the city. Xiao Yanxi handed me the official document. Her grandson was being held on an estate outside the city. The court has already sent men to rescue him. This is the witness protection order. I took the document. The paper still carried the warmth of his hand. You already knew the Gu family intended to force me to give in today. I guessed. Why didn't you go inside? He looked at me. Ending the engagement was your matter. If you needed evidence, I could investigate it for you. If you needed official documents, I could obtain them for you. But the words that belonged to you should have been spoken by you, not by me. Rain slanted beyond the eaves. I gathered the cloak more closely around me, and suddenly felt that the spring rain was not cold at all. Xiao Yanxi. It was the first time I called him by name. Thank you. He did not say there was no need. He only gave a slight nod. Nanny Zhou is awake, he said. She knows what Zhang Ruwei said before she died. Nanny Zhou looked much older than I remembered. She lay in a secure residence arranged by the court, with a serious injury on one arm. When she saw Mother, she struggled to sit up and wept so hard she could barely speak. Eldest Miss Jiang, I failed, second miss. Mother held her hand. What exactly happened before Ruwei died? Nanny Zhou closed her eyes, tears tracing the lines of her face. Second Miss discovered that Miss Wanru was secretly exchanging letters with someone in the capital, and had also stolen the pharmacy's seal. She wanted to take Miss Wanru away, but Miss Wanru refused. Later, Second Miss began growing unusually drowsy and suffered heart palpitations. I thought it was an old illness. On the night before she died, she became gravely ill. She gripped my hand and said, Nanny Zhou's voice shook. What they want is not the prescription. They want the Shen family's military records. Mother swayed. I quickly supported her. Aunt Ru Wei had never been involved in the Shen family's military affairs. The only way she could have known that someone was after the military records was through Su Wanru. Did Aunt leave anything else? An account book, Nanny Zhou said. Second Miss discovered that the accounts of Jishi Hall's capital branch were suspicious and copied several pages. But later Miss Wanru's people came after us. I only had time to hide a few sheets in a crack in the wall of the dye workshop. Why did you wait until now to come forward? Nanny Zhou bit her lip. They captured my grandson. They said that if I dared return to the capital to report what happened, they would kill the child. I did not lecture her about loyalty. For an ordinary grandmother facing the life of her own grandson, fear was only human. The child has already been rescued. At Xiao Yanxi's signal, a boy of 7 or 8 was brought into the room. Nanny Zhou rushed forward and held him tightly. She cried for a long time. After her sobs finally quieted, she knelt before Mother and me. I am willing to testify, as long as I can clear Second Miss's name. I would give my life if that is what it takes. You need to keep your life. I helped Nanny Zhou to her feet. Aunt Ru Wei needs someone alive who remembers who she truly was. The account pages Nanny Zhou had hidden were quickly recovered. They recorded large purchases of yellow root, jade cicada slough and other rare medicinal ingredients. Yet the buyers were listed only as ordinary pharmacies and miscellaneous accounts. At the bottom appeared the seal of Zhao Yunsheng, the manager of Jishi Hall's South City branch. Jishi Hall was part of Mother's dowry property. Because her health had been poor in recent years, she had entrusted the capital branches to Zhao Yunsheng. In my previous life, after Su Wanru entered the marquis household, Zhao Yunsheng had been one of the first people she went out of her way to win over. "I'll audit the accounts," I told Mother. "You have only just ended your engagement. The rumors outside are at their worst. That is exactly why I should do something that actually matters." I picked up the account pages. If Jishi Hall has been used to secretly prepare forbidden medicines, the Zhang family's reputation built over a century will be ruined. Mother was silent for a long time. Finally, she handed me the manager's authority seal. "Zhaoning, Mother always wanted to arrange a smooth road for you. I am only now beginning to understand that a smooth road may not be the road you want. Go do what you believe is right." Jishisal's South City branch was far more chaotic than I expected. The account books looked neat on the surface, but the actual inventory differed dramatically from the written records. Zhao Yunxing greeted me with a broad smile. "Eldest miss, you don't understand the medicinal trade. Some ingredients are difficult to preserve. A high amount of spoilage is normal." I opened one ledger. 400 jin of Yaluo root entered the warehouse this year. Your books record 120 jin as spoiled. This root can be stored for 10 years after proper drying, yet you claim 30% was lost in a single year. Zhao Yunsheng's smile stiffened. Perhaps a clerk recorded it incorrectly. Then what about jade cicada slough? 20 cases arrive every month. The counter recorded only 6 cases sold in an entire year, yet the warehouse is empty. I closed the ledger. "Manager Zhao, this is not a clerical error. You sent the medicine somewhere else." Zhao Yunsheng's expression turned cold. "A young lady should stay in the inner household and embroider. Why come wading into muddy water?" The shop doors slammed shut as he finished speaking. Several workers came out from the rear hall, armed. Qingdai immediately moved in front of me. I did not retreat. Before coming, I had already arranged for Xiao Yanxi's men to wait outside. But if officials simply stormed in and arrested Zhao Yunsheng, he could claim that his employees were only defending the shop. I wanted him to expose the hidden medicine himself. "Manager Zhao," I deliberately stepped back. "Even if you silence me, you cannot destroy every account book." "Account books?" He gave a cold laugh. "Young lady, what you saw was only what I was willing to let you see. The real accounts were burned long ago. And the forbidden medicines? Naturally they aren't here either." Only after saying it did he realize he had revealed too much. I knocked over a prepared container of harmless but strongly irritating powder. The men who had advanced toward us were immediately forced to stop, coughing and unable to see clearly. Qingdai and I had already protected our faces and moved back against the wall. "No one will die from it," I said to Zhao Yunsheng. "Your men chose to threaten us first." A crash sounded outside as the doors were forced open. Officers from the court rushed in and restrained the men. Xiao Yanxi entered last. He swept a glance over the chaotic floor, then looked at me. "Are you hurt?" "No. Next time you plan to use something like that, tell me beforehand." I thought he was about to scold me for taking a risk. Instead, he added, "Several officers breathed it in when they broke through the door. Liu Lingfeng is outside complaining loudly." I could not help laughing. For the first time in days, the tension inside me loosened. After Zhao Yunsheng was taken away, we found a hidden storage chamber beneath the well in the rear courtyard. Inside were large quantities of Yaluo root and jade cicada slough, as well as stacks of bills connected to the second prince's accounting office. But the accountant was identified only by a code name, Xuanji. No real name appeared. Xiao Yanxi crouched beside the boxes and examined the shipping records. These medicines were sent out twice every month. One shipment entered the capital. One went to the northern frontier. My heart tightened. If thousand soul powder were mixed into military provisions, it would not necessarily cause an immediate collapse. Liu Lingfeng came in from outside, his eyes still reddened from the irritant. But soldiers exposed to it over time could develop dizziness, weakness, and heart palpitations. If symptoms appeared during battle, the consequences could be disastrous. In my previous life, the army under my elder brother's responsibility had suddenly collapsed while fighting the northern enemy. The court had blamed his command. He held an isolated city for 3 days to protect the surviving troops and was killed defending it. So it had not been because he was incapable. Someone had tampered with the army's provisions long before the battle. My nails pressed into my palm. Xiao Yanxi noticed, but offered no empty words of comfort. He simply placed a northern frontier shipping slip in front of me. "There is still time." The next shipment of military provisions was scheduled for early summer. I drew a slow breath and forced myself to calm down. 20 days. That is enough time to find whoever receives the goods. We investigated until late at night. The edge of a ledger cut my right hand. Xiao Yan took a strip of gauze from Liu Lingfeng's medical case. It's only a small cut, I said. Thousand soul powder also begins with small amounts, he replied seriously. I had no choice but to hold out my hand. His movements were careful. Whenever his fingers brushed my palm, they moved away almost immediately. Candlelight trembled in the room. I suddenly remembered Gu Mingheng. In the past, when I organized his manuscripts and cut my finger on paper, he had only told me that a woman should be more careful in her work. Xiao Yanci did not tell me that I should not have come to Jishi Hall. He did not tell me that such matters should be left to men. He simply bandaged my hand, moved the candle closer and asked, "How much longer are you reading?" "Until I finish this ledger. I'll stay." "Deputy Minister Xiao, you do not need to watch over me and everything. I'm not watching over you." He lowered his eyes and opened another ledger. I have my own case to investigate. But that night, he finished his own files long before I did, and still remained until I closed the final ledger. At dawn we finally found the person behind the codename Xuanji in an inconspicuous transportation record. He was the chief steward of the Minister of Rights' residence, and he was Gu Mingheng's maternal uncle. On the day of the second prince's birthday palace banquet, Su Wanru appeared as a niece of Madame Gu. The Gu family had taken her in after all. She wore a pale white court dress and almost no makeup, making her look even more delicate than she had at the Marquis household. The moment she saw me, her eyes reddened. "Cousin," I walked past without stopping. Grand Princess Jiahua sat in the place of honor and beckoned me over. She had accompanied the army on campaign when she was young. Her nature was direct and forthright, and she hated indirect schemes. "I heard you broke off the Gu engagement." "Good." Without the slightest restraint, she glanced at Gu Mingheng. If a man wants both the power of his wife's family and another woman's gentle admiration, he may as well go home, embrace a mirror, and marry himself. Someone at the banquet failed to hold back a laugh. Gu Mingheng's expression turned ugly. Su Wanru lowered her voice. "Your Highness has misunderstood. Young Master Gu only pitied me. If you truly knew how to keep proper distance, you would not have used his private seal to collect medicine." Grand Princess Jiahua shut her down with a single sentence. Su Wanru's face paled, and she silently retreated to Madame Gu's side. Halfway through the banquet, palace attendants began pouring wine. The jade pendant inside my sleeve suddenly grew hot. Since the second time the thoughts appeared, a tiny crack had formed on its surface. This time, the heat came very quickly. I looked up at Su Wanru. She had lowered her head as if listening to Madame Gu. A line of dark writing appeared above her. "As long as the poisoned wine reaches the Grand Princess, and they find the medicine powder in Shen Zhaoning's sleeve afterward, she will never recover from it." My gaze turned cold. The wine cup before Grand Princess Jiahua had the same pattern as mine. The palace maid who poured the wine had lightly bumped my table as she passed. I did not immediately raise an alarm. If I simply overturned the cup now, the true person behind the scheme would remain hidden. Using the excuse of rising to toast the Grand Princess, I changed places with her. "Your Highness, I have something to ask." I blocked the other guest's view and discreetly tested the wine with the silver hairpin from my sleeve. The hairpin showed no change. That did not prove the wine was safe, because Thousand Soul powder was not the kind of poison an ordinary silver test could reveal. Even so, the wine carried a faint bitter almond-like scent. "Don't drink it," I whispered. Grand Princess Jiahua did not so much as blink. She smiled and took my cup instead. "I suddenly feel like trying eldest Miss Shen's wine instead." She pushed her own cup toward me. The instant Su Wanru looked up, her expression visibly changed. Holding the suspicious cup, I walked toward her. "Cousin," she stepped back half a pace. "Today is His Highness the Second Prince's birthday. Let me toast you." "I cannot hold my liquor. It's only fruit wine." I held the cup out toward her. "Or do you know there is some reason this cup cannot be drunk?" Su Wanru's pupils tightened. Gu Mingheng immediately stepped in front of her. "Shen Zhaoning, what are you trying to do now? Young Master Gu cares so much. Why don't you drink it for her?" I turned the cup toward him. Gu Mingheng did not dare take it either. At last, the people around us realized something was wrong. The second prince, Xiao Chengyu, sat above us with a mild expression. "Miss Shen, it is not the place for a disturbance." I bowed. "Your Highness, I suspect this cup of wine has been poisoned." The hall erupted in alarm. Xiao Chengyu's gaze shifted slightly. "What evidence do you have?" "Have an imperial physician examine it." The physician inspected the wine for a long time before finally finding a tiny amount of Yeluo root extract. If the Grand Princess had drunk it, she would not have collapsed immediately. A serious heart-related episode would have struck 3 days later, making it difficult to connect the incident back to this banquet. Grand Princess Jiahua gave a cold laugh. Search everyone involved. The palace maid who had first poured the wine was seized. She insisted that Qingdai had instructed her. She even claimed that I resented the Grand Princess for once recommending young Master Gu to His Majesty, and that I had therefore ordered the poisoning. The explanation was absurd, but clearly prepared in advance. Almost immediately, attendants found a packet of powder beneath my seat. Gu Mingheng spoke at once. Now both the culprit and the evidence are here. I looked at him. And suddenly I understood why, when the Shen family was condemned in my previous life, he had never spoken a single word in my defense. Because every time I had been framed, he had not merely known about it, he had participated. Culprit and evidence? Xiao Yan walked in from outside the hall. He had been assigned to oversee security for today's palace banquet, and Liu Lingfeng followed behind him. Liu Lingfeng took the packet, examined it, and shook his head. This is not yellow root. It is an ordinary sleeping powder mixed with a large amount of flour. He checked my sleeves and hands. Eldest Miss Shen has no trace of contact with the substance found in the poisoned wine. The palace maid's face changed. She clearly had not known that the powder planted beneath my seat had already been switched. I glanced at Qingdai. She gave me the faintest blink. Before entering the palace, I had suspected someone might try to plant something on me, so I had asked her to check our seats and surroundings in advance. She had removed the suspicious packet hidden beneath my table. The real evidence, if the plotter had handled it personally, would still be somewhere on that person's body. Search everyone who approached the wine table, Grand Princess Jiahua ordered. From Su Wanru's sleeve, the attendants found a small porcelain bottle. The residue at its mouth matched the substance in the wine. Su Wanru collapsed. It has nothing to do with me. The palace maid put it in my sleeve, she cried while desperately looking toward the second prince. But Xiao Chengyu's expression was indifferent, as though he had never met her. The writing above her head had still not disappeared. His Highness clearly promised that as long as I hid the military records inside the Shen Ancestral Hall, he would keep me safe. My heart sank. The Shen Ancestral Hall. In my previous life when father was convicted, officers had found incriminating correspondence hidden inside a compartment behind the ancestral tablets. I looked sharply at Xiao Yan. He had seen the line too. This time, he did not question the Grand Princess about the strange writing. He immediately stepped forward. Your Highness, I request that the palace gates be sealed at once, and that officers accompany eldest Miss Shen back to the Marquis Manor. The second prince said mildly, You intend to search a noble family's ancestral hall merely because of supernatural writing? Xiao Yan raised his eyes. Not search it. Protect potential evidence. For the first time, I saw the gentle expression disappear completely from Xiao Chengyu's face. Father and I rushed back to the Marquis Manor that same night. The ancestral hall showed no obvious sign of disturbance, but in the hidden compartment behind the ancestral tablets, we found a black wooden box that had not been there before. Father opened it himself. Inside were a written pledge, a defensive map of the northern frontier, and a seal bearing the insignia of the northern enemy's royal court. The written pledge claimed that father was willing to cede 30% of the frontier territories in exchange for northern support for a Shen family rebellion. Father's hands shook with fury. Absurd. This is not my writing. I held the document near the lamp. The paper was thick, with an extremely faint gold thread pattern along the edge. This is tribute paper the Ministry of Rites supplies specifically for imperial ceremonial texts. Ordinary people cannot obtain it. Father looked at me. How do you know that? In my previous life, I had studied that forged letter countless times while trying to clear his name. The invitations from the family's flower viewing banquet used paper with the same pattern. I thought it unusual, so I remembered it. I avoided his eyes. Father fell silent. He did not ask further. Instead, for the first time, he placed the key to the Shen family's military records archive in my hand. Jiaoning, from today onward, you and your mother will jointly recheck everyone entering and leaving the inner household. You will also participate in the copying, sealing, and storage of the military records. Father had once believed disputes inside the women's quarters were nothing more than small matters between women. Now he looked at the planned evidence inside the ancestral hall. His voice was heavy. Father was wrong. I tightened my fingers around the key. In my previous life, the Shen family had been destroyed before father ever had the chance to say those words. Now there was still time. The forged letter was not the end. It was only a blade the enemy had buried inside the Shen household in advance. The real hand behind the blade was still waiting for us to walk unsuspectingly into the trap. The black wooden box and everything inside it were sealed intact and handed over to the Court of Judicial Review for examination. That same night, Father ordered the entire Marquis Manor locked down. Every servant, no matter how many years they had served, had to have their place of origin, livelihood, and financial dealings over the previous 6 months checked again. Mother and I investigated the inner household. Father personally led the audit of the military records archive. It was nearly dawn when my elder brother, Shen Huaijin, returned from the western military camp. He had ridden through the night, dew still clinging to his shoulders. When he entered the study and saw the forged treason document on the table, his face changed. This was found in the ancestral hall? Father nodded. If Xiaoning had not discovered this in advance at the palace banquet, then when the court came to search the manor several days later, the Shen family could have offered 100 explanations and still failed to clear its name. Huaijin picked up the document and examined it repeatedly. The handwriting did indeed resemble Father's. The northern seal was also genuine. I pointed to the paper's edge. But this paper came through the Ministry of Rights. The invitations used at the Gu family's flower viewing banquet were made from the same gold thread tribute paper. Huaijin looked at me. His expression was complicated. Until this point, he had believed that even if Su Wanru had done wrong, the authorities still had to investigate before anyone could conclude she had killed her mother merely because words appeared above her head. I did not blame him. Since childhood, my brother had followed Father in studying military texts and law. He trusted evidence rather than emotion. That was exactly why I needed him to see the complete truth. This letter was not made to fool Father, I said. It was made to fool the court. The enemy did not need to imitate Father's handwriting perfectly. They only needed the searchers to find a seal from the northern enemy's court and a frontier defense map hidden in our ancestral hall. Father would already have lost most of the battle. Huaijin clenched the paper. How could Su Wanru possibly have had access to the Shen ancestral hall? She stayed in our manor for less than 10 days. But the people she bought were not limited to this household. I placed the statements from Cuiwei Chuntao and Zhao Yunsheng in front of him. In my previous life, I would have stopped before saying more. This time I continued. I checked the old household accounts. On the 1st and 15th of every month, incense and candles for the ancestral hall are purchased through the outer courtyard. For the last 3 months, the supplier was changed to a shop owned by the Gu family. The wooden box did not have to be placed there by Su Wanru herself. She only needed to tell someone where the hidden compartment was. Huaijin was silent for a long time. Then how did she know about the compartment? I looked toward the doorway. Mother stood there, pale. I told her. She slowly walked into the room. When she first came to the residence, she said she was afraid that because she had lost both parents, no one would make offerings for her after she died. I felt sorry for her and took her to the ancestral hall to pay respects to Ru Wei. At the time, she asked where the household kept important ancestral objects. I never mentioned the military records. I only said casually that important ritual objects were kept in hidden compartments. Mother's voice grew lower. I was the one who brought her inside. Mother, I took her hand. The person at fault is the one who used your trust. You do not need to carry the criminal's guilt for her. Huaijin looked at Mother, then at me. Suddenly he put the document back on the table. Jiaoning, what do you intend to do next? Father looked at me as well. It was the first time he had actively asked for my judgment during a crisis involving military affairs. I took out a map of Guangji Temple west of the city. The forged document was stained with ash from the pine and cypress incense used at Guangji Temple. Su Wanru is under guard at the palace, yet she continues to deny having gone there. The more firmly she denies it, the more likely the temple is hiding something important. Father frowned. Search the temple directly? I shook my head. Since the enemy planted the box inside our household, they must confirm whether we have discovered it. We should release news that dampness has affected the ancestral hall, and Father has ordered the ancestral tablets repaired 3 days from now. Once the other side learns the hidden compartment will soon be opened, they will have to send someone to Guangji Temple to destroy whatever evidence remains there. Huaijin said immediately, I'll take men and wait there. We cannot use Shen family troops. I looked at him. The second prince wants most of all to prove that the Shen family privately deploys soldiers. The Court of Judicial Review should set the surveillance. Father considered the plan for a moment. Then he removed another key from his waist and placed it before me. This is the spare key to the military records archive. From today onward, you and Huaijin will jointly participate in copying, sealing, and checking those records. I did not immediately take it. Father, aren't you afraid people will say a woman is interfering in military affairs? They have already buried a weapon inside the Shen ancestral hall. Father gave a cold laugh. If I still fear a few people's gossip, then I would truly be a fool. I closed my hand around the key. The cold metal pressed into my palm. In my previous life, even when Father entered prison, he never knew how the enemy had smuggled forged evidence into our home. In this life, he personally entrusted me with one of the keys protecting the Shen family. But Huaijin did not immediately agree with every part of my plan. When I proposed leaving the northern military supply route unchanged while secretly replacing the provisions themselves, his expression changed sharply. No. Those grain wagons pass 4 military camps along the route. Even if we replace the poisoned provisions beforehand, the enemy could tamper with them again on the road. We cannot use the lives of tens of thousands of soldiers as bait. The study fell silent. Father did not rebuke Huaijin, neither did I. My brother's objection was not because he distrusted me. It was because the lives of the soldiers were his responsibility. The real provisions bound for the northern frontier will leave 3 days early by water. I unfolded a second map. The wagons traveling openly on the original route will carry old rice and sandbags instead of the real military grain. The escort will consist entirely of Father's trusted personal guards. We will post a hidden sentry every 10 li along the route. We are not using soldiers as bait. We are using an empty supply convoy to expose the traitor buried inside the northern military supply system. Huaijin studied the map for a long time. When did you prepare this? When I found the northern shipping records in Jishi Hall's accounts. You suspected the military grain that early? Only suspected it, I said. That is why I first asked Xiao Yan to investigate the transportation route, and then asked Mother to identify the poison. I only continued after each step was confirmed. Huaijin slowly exhaled. Just now I thought you were willing to include the soldiers' lives in your calculations merely to catch the culprit. Zhoning, I'm sorry, you were not wrong. I folded the map. If you followed my plan without questioning anything, you would not be the brother I know. He looked at me. The last trace of uncertainty in his eyes finally disappeared. I will personally escort the decoy convoy. You stay in the capital and find the person behind this. He placed a hand on the map. We siblings will work one in the open and one in the shadows, and see exactly who dares use the Shen family and tens of thousands of frontier soldiers as steps toward power. That night, I accompanied Xiao Yan to Guangji Temple, west of the city. The temple had been abandoned for years. Broken walls and ruined structures lay beneath a thin layer of snow. We hid in a ruined room behind the main hall. Cold wind poured through a crack in the window, and warmth slowly left my hands and feet. The snowstorm from the road of exile in my previous life returned to my mind. Mother had collapsed in the snow. I had knelt and begged the escorting officers to stop, but the prison carts kept rolling past her. I knew all of that had already passed, yet my breathing still became faster. A hand warmer was quietly placed beside me. Xiao Yanzi sat half a step away. He did not touch me without permission. The watchers still haven't sent a signal, he said. You can close your eyes for a while. I can't sleep. Then don't sleep. You aren't going to ask why I'm afraid of snow? You will tell me when you want to. He took off his cloak and hung it over the broken window, blocking most of the cold wind. The room grew darker. It also became warmer. Xiao Yanzi, I said quietly, I once had a very long dream. In that dream, everyone in the Shen family died. He was silent for a moment. Is that why you always seem able to notice danger before everyone else? I did not know how to explain. Then don't explain. He turned toward me. I only need to ask one thing. What you are doing now, is it meant to harm innocent people or save them? Save them. Then that is enough. He did not demand every one of my secrets before agreeing to stand beside me. At that moment, I finally understood that real trust did not mean tearing open every old wound and exposing it completely. It meant that even if some wounds had not yet been spoken of, the other person would not treat them as evidence against you. At the third watch, 3 short bird calls sounded in the distance. Someone had entered Guangji Temple. There were 4 people. The leader was Zhou Peian, chief steward of the Minister of Rights residence. Behind him came 2 grain merchants and a man wearing a winter cap. They removed a military grain register from beneath the base of a Buddha statue. Xiao Yanzi did not immediately order their arrest. He waited until Zhou Peian personally said, the 3 shipments bound for the northern camp must leave exactly as planned. Only then did officers rush in from all sides. The man in the winter cap tried to destroy evidence and silence himself before he could be questioned, but Liu Lingfeng stopped him immediately. When the man was restrained, a bronze badge from the Court of Judicial Review fell from his waist. Everyone froze. I looked at Xiao Yanqi. His expression turned cold in an instant. The man was Han Jing, a judicial review officer at the Court of Judicial Review. He was responsible for matters connected to Su Wanru's transfer route and the witness register, so the second prince's influence had already reached inside the court itself. Han Jing kept his mouth tightly shut and refused to speak. Zhou Peian was not nearly as resolute. When Xiao Yanqi placed the Jishi Hall accounts, the grain shipment register, and records bearing Gu Mingheng's private seal before him, Zhou Peian finally confessed to something even more serious. Princess Consort Su did not die of illness 12 years ago. Xiao Yanqi's gaze hardened. Zhou Peian continued. She discovered that the Pei family was using connections in the Imperial Medical Institute to secretly move military medicines and intended to report it to the palace. The Pei family, which is His Highness the Second Prince's maternal clan, feared exposure and ordered a deputy director of the Imperial Medical Institute to put thousand soul powder into her medicine. 12 years later, that same deputy director tried to blackmail the second prince over what he knew. He was silenced with the same poison. I looked at Xianqi. He stood partly in shadow. No emotion showed on his face, but the hand holding his sword had tightened. He had investigated his mother's death for 12 years. Tonight, he finally received an answer. But truth could never bring the dead back. I went to his side. I did not tell him to accept condolences. I did not say everything was in the past. I simply took Zhou Peian's statement and placed it inside the official evidence case. We will submit this evidence together. Xiao Yanqi closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them again, his gaze was clear. Good. We leave no one out. After Han Jing was secretly detained, the court continued to operate outwardly as usual. Xiao Yanqi did not interrogate him immediately. Since Han Jing had access to the witness register and prisoner transfer arrangements, he was probably only one piece of a larger network. If they moved too quickly, everyone else inside the court who had been bought would immediately hide. We released word that the investigation at Guangji Temple had found nothing. Gu Mingheng was also temporarily allowed to return to the Gu residence, retaining only the suspicion surrounding his private correspondence with Su Wanru and the medicines he had collected for her. Everyone outside believed our evidence was still insufficient to threaten the second prince. At the same time, the court formally asked the emperor for permission to exhume and examine Zhang Ruwei's remains. The emperor approved. The day of the examination was heavily overcast. Mother stood before Ruwei's grave, her hands trembling constantly. When the coffin was raised, she turned away. Ruwei loved beautiful things when she was little. If even a strand of hair was untidy, she refused to leave the house. And now, merely to find out how she died, we have to disturb her resting place. I supported Mother. Aunt would have wanted the truth known. She left the medicine chest, and those account pages, because she hoped someone would find it. Liu Lingfeng and 2 coroners conducted the examination throughout the day. By nightfall, they found residues consistent with thousand soul powder in her teeth and bones, as well as on the silver hairpin buried with her. Their conclusion was that she had been exposed repeatedly for at least 3 months, with a much larger final dose, causing fatal heart failure. Liu Lingfeng handed the written examination report to Mother. After reading it, Mother said only one sentence. Ruwei did not die of illness. Then she sank beside the grave and wept until she could barely stand. Nanny Zhou formally signed and sealed her testimony as well. She testified that while Aunt Ruwei was seriously ill, Su Wanru forbade others from approaching the medicine stove. Every day, Wanru personally carried in the ginseng soup. Zhao Yunsheng of Jishihal also admitted that Su Wanru had used Gu Mingheng's private seal to collect the ingredients associated with thousand soul powder. Taken together, the evidence was enough to name her as the primary suspect. Yet she still refused to confess. When I saw her in the court's prison, she was even smiling. Cousin, you can prove I bought medicine. You can prove my mother died from thousand soul powder. But who can prove I was the one who poisoned her? Zhao Yunsheng will say anything to save himself. Nanny Zhou always resented me. As long as I refuse to confess, you have no direct evidence. She leaned against the wall, malice filling her eyes. Where is that strange jade of yours? Make it speak again. I closed my fingers around the heart-illuminating jade. Cracks covered its surface. Only one small section remained intact. Why did you kill Aunt Ruwei? I didn't kill her. She was your own mother. If she truly treated me like a daughter, she should not have stopped me from entering the Marquis household. Su Wanru sprang to her feet, her chains rattling. She had the 100 Herb secret compendium. She could have given me a better life, but she insisted on clinging to ridiculous rules. She said the second prince was using me. She said Gu Mingheng could not be trusted either. She wanted to take me away from the capital and go somewhere no one knew us so we could start over. Why should she have been allowed to decide my life for me? The jade pendant suddenly became scorching hot. For the last time, words appeared above Su Wanru's head. She discovered that the second prince had ordered me to steal the Shen family's military records. She wanted to report it to the Jingzhou prefecture authorities. I could only get rid of her first. A second line followed. The second prince promised that after the Shen family fell, he would make me his secondary consort. Gu Mingheng was only meant to be a stepping stone. Su Wanru could not see the words above her head. She continued arguing. Then a clear crack sounded from the jade pendant in my hand. It split completely in two. The writing vanished. The cell became quiet again. Su Wanru stared at the broken jade, stunned at first. Then she burst into wild laughter. It's useless now. Shen Zhouning, your strange jade is useless. Without it, what do you have left to defeat me? I placed the broken pieces on the table. The account books you failed to burn. The witnesses you failed to silence. The official examination report. The pharmacy collection records. Gu Mingheng's private seal. Zhao Yunsheng's testimony. And every trace you left behind while trying to obtain the 100 Herb secret compendium and the military records. I looked at her steadily. Su Wanru, the heart-illuminating jade, only allowed us to see you clearly a little sooner. What will truly condemn you is everything you did yourself. The smile finally disappeared from her face. When I walked out of the cell, Xiao Yan was standing beneath the corridor. He saw the broken jade in my hand. It won't show her thoughts again, I said. My voice was lighter than I expected. It felt as though, when the pendant broke, the final thread tying me to my previous life had broken with it. Xiao Yanqi handed me a stack of case files. At the top was Aunt Rui's official examination report. Beneath it were the pharmacy accounts, Nanny Zhou's signed testimony, Zhao Yunsheng's confession, the Guangji Temple grain register, and Han Jing's court badge. From now on, you do not need that jade to prove anything for you. He looked at me. Shen Zhouning, you found all of this evidence yourself. You walked this road yourself. You saved these people yourself. My eyes suddenly burned. I'm still afraid. Of what? That even after doing all this, I will still lose them. He did not make an easy promise that I would not. Instead, he handed me a military dispatch that had just arrived. Your brother has safely reached the northern camp. The contaminated grain has all been replaced. Marquis Shen has taken control of the military's supply chain. Madame Shen is now protected by trusted guards from Prince Su's residence. He paused. The things you fear, we are stopping them one by one. We are not waiting for fate to spare us. We are making sure it has no chance to repeat itself. For the first time, I reached out and took his hand. Only for an instant. But unlike before, I did not immediately regret relying on someone. Xiao Yanqi, what if one day I make the wrong judgment? I'll remind you. And if you're wrong, you remind me. What if I refuse to listen? Then I'll argue until you do. I could not help laughing. But that moment of ease lasted less than an hour. Han Jing made his move. He bribed the guards and altered Su Wanru's transfer route. 2 escorting officers were killed during the escape before Su Wanru was freed from the prison carriage. 1 surviving officer returned badly injured with the news. Xiao Yanzi immediately ordered the city gates sealed. But I suddenly remembered something. She won't leave the city. Why? The 100 Herb secret compendium is still in Mother's hands. Su Wanru had reached the point where she had no way back. She would never accept escaping empty-handed. She would return to the Marquis Manor. Han Jing himself was recaptured in a gambling house in the south of the city. Liu Lingfeng discovered that he owed 20,000 taels in gambling debts, while his wife and children were being controlled by the second prince's people. Han Jing confessed that he had not only changed Su Wanru's transfer route, but had repeatedly leaked the progress of court investigations over the previous 3 years. Most importantly, he brought one final piece of news. The emperor had already reviewed part of the evidence and secretly ordered the second prince's residence searched the next morning. Through Han Jing's final message, the second prince had learned of that order. He had only 1 night left. He could submit to investigation. Or he could gamble everything. I looked toward the imperial palace. The lights there still burned brightly, and the city appeared calm. But the true storm was already approaching. I did not move Mother out of the Marquis Manor. The court's previous safe residence had already been exposed. A hurried transfer would only create more danger. Father replaced the household guards with his most trusted personal men. Huai Jin remained at the northern frontier to stabilize the army and could not return to the capital. As Mother watched me arrange hidden guards throughout the courtyard, she suddenly asked, "Did you already know Wanru would come back?" "Yes." "Then why didn't you send me away?" "Because she already knows the 100 Herb secret compendium is in your hands. Wherever you hide, she will search for you. I took mother's hand. Instead of letting her choose a place we do not know, it is safer to make her come somewhere we have prepared. Mother did not blame me. What do you need me to do? I stared at her. Mother, aren't you afraid? I am. Her voice was quiet, but I already let my fear of losing Ruwei make me believe Wanru's tears once. This time I do not want to hide behind you. We moved the real 100 Herb secret compendium into the secure vault of Prince Su's residence. What remained in Mother's courtyard was a convincing counterfeit copy. Liu Lingfeng had treated the outside with a colorless, odorless tracking substance. It left a distinctive scent on the handler's clothes that trained hounds could pick up from several away. Soon after the appointed hour, a soft sound came from the rear window. I sat beneath the lamp without looking up. You're later than I expected. A dark figure stepped from behind the screen. Su Wanru stepped out with blood on her face and held a blade against Mother. Cousin, you really were waiting for me. Her eyes fixed on me. Give me the 100 Herb secret compendium, or you'll lose another mother. My heart tightened violently. But Mother only looked at me and gave the slightest nod. It was the signal we had agreed on. She was unharmed. You already killed your own mother, I said as I slowly stood. Threatening mine is hardly beyond you. Su Wanru's face twisted. Don't act as though you understand me. You had everything from childhood. Aunt loved you. The Marquis household protected you. Gu Mingheng was engaged to you. Even Xiao Yanqi believes you. What did I have? A broken medicine chest, a leaking house, and a mother who only knew how to tell me to accept my fate. So you killed her. She was the one trying to destroy me, Su Wanru shouted. She learned that the second prince wanted me to enter the Marquis household, and she tried to take me away. She said Gu Mingheng would never truly care for me. She said the second prince only saw me as a pawn. She knew nothing. Once the Shen family fell, I was going to become the prince's secondary consort. I looked at her. For the first time, I found her pathetic, but not deserving of pity. Aunt understood far more than you did. She knew the second prince would never keep his promise. She knew Gu Mingheng did not love you. He loved the reflection of himself in a woman who worshipped him. She wanted to take you away because she was trying to save you. Shut up! As Su Wanru tightened her grip, the blade left a faint red mark on Mother's neck. Give me the book. I pushed the counterfeit copy across the table. Release Mother. She snatched up the book and hurriedly flipped through it. The instant Su Wanru lowered her head, Mother bit down on her wrist and the blade fell to the floor. I kicked the blade out of reach, seized her by the arm, and restrained her until the guards arrived. During exile in my previous life, I had learned to protect Mother in desperate scuffles over food, and that hard-earned instinct had never left me. She cried out as her right arm was dislocated. Father's guards burst through the door and pinned her down. She screamed at me. Shen Jiaoning, you only won because of that cursed jade. I placed the 2 broken halves of the heart-illuminating jade in front of her. It already broke. Tonight's trap was mine from beginning to end. I knew you would not run. I knew you could not accept losing everything, and I knew you would come back for the last thing you believed could still reverse your fate. Su Wanru stared at the broken jade. For the first time, genuine fear appeared in her eyes. The book is fake? Of course. The real 100 Herb secret compendium is somewhere you will never reach. The last of her resistance seemed to leave her and she slumped to the floor. Xiao Yanqi arrived with his men not long afterward. I was treating the minor wound at Mother's neck. The moment he entered, he checked Mother, then me. How badly are you hurt? Only a superficial injury. After confirming we were safe, he finally looked at Su Wanru, who had been bound and placed under guard. The tracking substance is on her clothes, I said. After Han Jing freed her, someone must have arranged a place for her to hide. The hounds can follow the route back. Xiao Yanqi nodded. He wasn't angry that I had set the trap myself. Instead, after checking the eastern hidden gate and the guard positions, he asked quietly, where had you planned to retreat if the courtyard was breached? The hidden gate in the east wall. Father's guards were waiting outside. Next time, tell me where the hidden gate is. You're worried I wouldn't get out? I'm worried I would use the wrong entrance. He glanced at the damaged main doorway. Just now, in order to get inside, we tore down an extra section of wall. I followed his gaze. I could not help laughing. Mother laughed softly too. It was the first true smile she had shown since Aunt Ruwei's death. The tracking hounds led the investigators to an estate outside the capital. Beneath the estate, they found 3,000 sets of armor, large quantities of unregistered bows and military equipment, and ledgers and seals pointing directly to the second prince's residence. At the same time, another court insider named by Han Jing was arrested. That man had been responsible for destroying the old case records concerning Princess Consort Su. In his home, Xiao Yan found a handwritten medication record made 12 years earlier by the deputy director of the Imperial Medical Institute. The record confirmed that after Princess Consort Su discovered the Pei family's illegal movement of military medicines, she intended to enter the palace the next day and report it directly to the emperor. That very night, acting on orders connected to the second prince's maternal clan, the deputy director put 1,000 soul powder into her calming medicine. Xiao Yan read the record for a long time without speaking. I stood beside him. Your mother's case can be reopened now. She did not die of illness. She was not simply weak. She was silenced because she tried to expose the truth. Xiao Yan closed the file. I investigated for 12 years. I once thought that if I found the murderer, I would finally be able to let it go. And now, I cannot. He looked toward the armor stacked beneath the estate. But I can make the people who killed her answer for what they did. Suddenly, urgent bells rang in the distance. 1, 2, until the 9th bell sounded. A palace messenger galloped into the estate. His Majesty has been poisoned and has fallen unconscious. The second prince declared that Prince Su was rebelling and had already sent troops to seal the palace gates. This uprising had not come without warning. The second prince already knew that the emperor intended to search his residence the next day. The hidden armory outside the capital had been discovered. The forbidden medicine case, the poisoned military provisions, and Princess Consort Su's old case all pointed toward him. He had no way back. His only choice was to seize power first that night. Xiao Yan immediately summoned troops and prepared to enter the palace. He had gone only a few steps when he stopped. You stay at the Marquis Manor. The emperor was poisoned with 1,000 soul powder, I said. Only the 100 herb secret compendium contains the complete treatment. The Imperial Medical Institute may not be able to prepare the antidote on its own. There is fighting inside the palace, which is exactly why someone has to bring the remedy in. We looked at each other for a long time. For the first time, he directly opposed my decision. I cannot escort the evidence and guarantee your safety at the same time. I do not need you to do two things at once. I stepped closer. You take your men and secure the palace gates. Do what only you can do. I will enter the Imperial Medical Institute with the Grand Princess's people and help prepare the antidote. But, Xiao Yan, I interrupted him. You once said that if one of us judged wrongly, the other would remind them. Then I am reminding you now. Do not let your concern for me make you take away something I am capable of doing. The wind tugged at his blood-stained sleeve. After a long silence, he finally stepped aside. I'll escort you to the Western Passage. And after that, I defend the Golden Hall. I save the Emperor. We meet there. This was not one person protecting the other. It meant each of us walking into danger on our own path, trusting to see theirs through. He held out his hand. See you at the Golden Hall. I took it. Grand Princess Zhaoa brought me through the Western Secret Passage into the Imperial Medical Institute. An arrow had struck her shoulder, staining half her sleeve. Yet she still personally guarded the medicine storehouse. The Snow Lotus Heart and Golden Thread Vine are both inside. How long can His Majesty hold on? Liu Lingfeng had just checked the Emperor's condition. His face was grim. At most an hour and a half. I opened the 100 Herb Secret Compendium. The antidote required 27 medicinal ingredients and an extremely precise sequence of preparation. Several ingredients needed separate processing, and the timing of the final herbs was critical. A serious mistake could make the medicine useless or even dangerous. Several imperial physicians questioned me. Miss Shen is not an imperial physician. How can she make decisions about His Majesty's medicine? Grand Princess Jiahua drew her blade and struck the medicine table. If any of you already knew how to save His Majesty, why is he still unconscious? No one argued again. I wrote the full preparation sequence down and divided the work among the imperial physicians, personally overseeing the most critical herbs. The fighting outside drew closer and closer. Shadows of moving weapons crossed the paper windows. I did not know whether Xiao Yan had reached the Golden Hall. I did not know whether father could hold the palace gates. I did not know whether Huaijin, far away at the northern frontier, had fully secured the contaminated military provisions. But I had no time to be afraid. As the final stage was completed, the decoction gradually turned blue-brown. The medicine was ready. Half an hour after the emperor took it, he had a severe reaction. Then his pulse gradually began to recover. At almost the same moment, soldiers outside shouted the news. Prince Su's heir has secured Chengtian Gate. The second prince's private troops have laid down their weapons. General Shen has sent an urgent report from the northern camp. The poisoned provisions have all been intercepted, and the military supply officer has confessed to acting under orders connected to the second prince's residence. When the emperor opened his eyes, the first line of dawn was already visible in the sky. The second prince, Xiao Chengyu, was brought before the Golden Hall. He still refused to confess. Father, your son received secret information that Prince Su had hidden weapons and intended to rebel. I led troops into the palace, only to protect your majesty. Xiao Yanzi threw the ledgers from the estate outside the capital in front of him. The estate is registered under a steward of the second prince's residence. The casting marks on the armor trace back to 3 ironworks controlled by the Pei family. Han Jing's and Zhou Peian's signed confessions are both here. He looked directly at Xiao Chengyu. Your Highness, would you like to continue claiming that Prince Su's residence forged all of this? Xiao Chengyu's face finally changed completely. Gu Mingheng and Su Wanru were also brought into the hall. The moment Gu Mingheng realized the second prince could no longer protect him, he dropped to his knees. Your Majesty, I am willing to testify. It was all ordered by the second prince. I only collected medicine for Su Wanru a few times. I had no idea she intended to kill anyone. Su Wanru stared at him. You said you would protect me. Gu Mingheng would not look at her. You deceived me. You said you only wanted to enter the Marquis household as an adopted daughter. You never said you had killed your mother, and you certainly never said you intended to frame the Marquis of Ningyuan. Su Wanru suddenly laughed. Gu Mingheng, without the tribute paper you stole from the Ministry of Rights, without the travel permit you arranged for me, and without the grain merchants your uncle connected us with, how could an orphaned woman like me possibly have done all of this? Now you want to push every crime onto me. How are you any different from me? Watching them turn on each other finally allowed everyone to see what their so-called deep affection truly was. They had only used each other while their interests aligned. I stepped into the center of the hall and presented the evidence one item at a time. I, Shen Zhaoning, submit the following evidence. First, the official examination establishing that Zhang Ruwei was murdered. Second, the Jishi Hall account books recording the secret movement of forbidden medicinal ingredients. Third, the correspondence and private seals showing that Gu Mingheng arranged Su Wanru's travel documents and collected medicinal ingredients for her. Fourth, the forged treason pledge found in the Shen Ancestral Hall, together with the seal from the Northern Enemy's Court and tribute paper linked to the Ministry of Rights. Fifth, the evidence regarding the contaminated grain sent toward the northern frontier and the confession of the military supply official. Sixth, the ledgers for the second prince's hidden armor and weapons. Seventh, the medication record documenting Princess Consort Su's poisoning 12 years ago. Eighth, the confessions of court insider Han Jing and clerk Qin Fang. These materials have been separately examined and cross-verified by the Court of Judicial Review, the Ministry of Justice, the Imperial Medical Institute, and the Marquis of Ningyuan's household. I paused. The strange writing that appeared during the adoption banquet and later investigations has not been entered into the official case file. Today's convictions do not rely on ghosts or gods, they rely only on evidence. The emperor leaned back against the dragon throne, his face still pale from illness. He looked at the second prince. Chengyu, I gave you a fief, authority, and my trust. Why was it still not enough? Xiao Chengyu suddenly raised his head. Because the crown prince is incompetent. Father knows he cannot hold the realm, yet because of the rule of succession you still intend to leave the throne to him. What is wrong with fighting for what should be mine? The emperor closed his eyes. You were not fighting for something that belonged to you. You were paving your road with the lives of common people, soldiers, and your own kin. In the end, the second prince was stripped of his rank and reduced to a commoner, to remain imprisoned for life. The principal members of the Pei family who participated in the illegal movement of military medicines, the poisoning of Princess Consort Su, and the attempted palace seizure were convicted according to their involvement. Han Jing, the court insider who leaked case information, helped Su Wanru escape, and was responsible for the deaths of 2 escorting officers, was sentenced to death. Clerk Qin Fang received credit for turning over evidence from the old case, but because he had also accepted bribes and helped destroy records, he was exiled. Gu Mingheng was convicted for transporting forbidden medicines, participating in the forged military record scheme, and colluding with the prince's faction to frame a noble household. He was stripped of his scholarly and official qualifications, and exiled 3,000 li. The Gu family was implicated as well. The Minister of Rights retired from office, and the clan withdrew from the center of political power in the capital. Su Wanru faced multiple convictions for poisoning her mother, framing others, escaping custody, and assisting the rebellion plot. She was sentenced to execution after autumn. As she was taken from the hall, she suddenly shouted, "Cousin." It was the last time she ever called me that. I turned around. For the first time, true fear showed in her eyes. My mother, did she really want to take me away from the capital? She truly wasn't planning to hand me over to the second prince? I took a letter from my sleeve. Nanny Joe had only recently found it. Aunt Ruwei had written it to Mother but never had the chance to send it. The letter said she had already purchased a small pharmacy in the south and planned to take her daughter away from the capital. She did not seek wealth or rank. She wanted only for mother and daughter to live safely. Aunt prepared a new identity for you, a new home, and enough silver for the two of you to live for several years. She was not telling you to accept your fate. She was trying to find you a way to live. Su Wanru stared blankly at the letter. Why didn't she tell me? Because she wanted to make certain first that the second prince's people would not be able to follow you. She was protecting you until the end. Su Wanru's expression slowly broke. But a moment later, she cried sharply, if she truly loved me, she should have given me the 100 Herb secret compendium. I put the letter away. And that is why, even now, you still do not understand. Love is not taking someone else's life and using it to fill your own desires. She was willing to leave everything behind and start over with you. You rejected that road because it was not rich or powerful enough. Su Wanru was taken out of the Golden Hall. Whether she regretted anything after that no longer mattered. Aunt Ruwei had truly loved her. That was precisely why Suru's choices were even harder to forgive. After the palace was secured, I walked out of the Golden Hall. Xiao Yan was waiting beneath the long palace corridor. Morning light rested on his shoulders. He looked as calm as ever, though the tips of his ears had gone slightly red. Shen Zhaoning, there is something I want to ask your opinion about first. What? I want to ask His Majesty for permission to marry you. He said it with complete seriousness. Unlike Gu Mingheng in the past, he did not speak of marriage as though it were a favor being granted to me. What if, after marriage, I continue managing Jishi Hall? You should. What if I continue running a clinic, visiting pharmacies and investigating cases alongside men? That is your work. What if Prince Su's household objects? I'll explain. And if they still don't understand, then they can take their time getting used to it. I could not help smiling. Are you asking for the wife of Prince Su's heir, or manager Shen of Jishi Hall? He looked at me. I am asking for Shen Zhaoning. The Shen Zhaoning who audits accounts, lays traps, and keeps moving forward even when she is afraid. If any one of those parts were missing, she would no longer be herself. In my previous life, Gu Mingheng had wanted me gentle, obedient, and endlessly tolerant. Xiao Yan, however, told me I never needed to cut away part of myself before I could become someone's wife. I held out my hand. Lord Xiao, are you not going to take it? He froze for an instant. Then he closed his hand firmly around mine. This time I did not let go. Aunt Ruwei was reburied in the Zhang family's ancestral cemetery. On the day of the burial, Mother personally combed her hair. In the coffin were placed the pale moon-white dress she had loved most, the medicine chest that had accompanied her for years, and the silver hairpin Nanny Joe had preserved. Mother sat before the grave for a long time. Ruwei, your elder sister came too late. But the people who harmed you have answered for what they did. Your 100 Herb secret compendium did not fall into their hands. Wanrao? Mother paused. The path that brought her to this point was one she chose herself. Wind crossed the hillside. New grass moved gently before the grave. Some wounds do not disappear the instant the truth becomes known. But from that day onward, Mother could finally remember her younger sister through the truth, rather than a lie. Princess Consort Su's old case was formally reopened as well. The Emperor posthumously conferred on her the title of chaste and loyal Princess Consort, and the crimes of the Deputy Director of the Imperial Medical Institute and the Pei family members who had participated in poisoning her were publicly established. Xiao Yanzi did not break down in front of his mother's memorial. He simply stood there alone for a long time. I remained beside him. You once said that even finding the murderer might not let you move on. What about now? I still can't. He placed incense into the burner. But from today onward, no one will say she died because she was weak and sickly. People will remember what she tried to do. I took his hand. Just as he had stayed beside me on that snowy night, I did not tell him to forget. I simply stayed and remembered with him. Every suspicion that the Shen family had colluded with the northern enemy was completely cleared. Father voluntarily surrendered part of the Shen family's authority to copy military records so our household would no longer monopolize sensitive military documents and invite another round of suspicion. Huai Jin was promoted to Deputy General of the Northern Camp for protecting the military provisions and helping uncover the internal traitors. When he returned to the capital to report on his duties, the first thing he did was come to my courtyard and steal my pastries. I spent 2 months at the northern frontier eating hard travel rations. Surely you can spare your own brother a plate of osmanthus pastries. Did you come back to report to the court or to steal food? I'm your real brother. Being my real brother doesn't mean you can eat the whole plate. He took another bite, then suddenly became quiet. Zhouning, in your previous life. He stopped, clearly realizing how strange the phrase sounded. I mean, in that dream of yours. If I really died there, were you sad for a long time? I looked at his living face and nearly cried. So in this life, you need to live much longer. He patted my head. Don't worry. I still need to live long enough to watch you torment Xiao Yan. He wouldn't let me. Then he's the one tormenting you. You're imagining things. You're defending him before you're even married. He covered his chest in exaggerated pain. Mother stood outside the doorway listening to us argue, smiling until her eyes turned red. Such ordinary noise had once been the most unreachable dream of my previous life. Now it had become part of every ordinary morning. After Jishi Hall reopened, I submitted the identifying characteristics and treatment information related to Thousand Soul Powder to the Imperial Medical Institute for official record. I also established Qinghui Medical Clinic in the eastern part of the city, specializing in treatment for poor women and children. Nanny Zhou helped manage the pharmacy. Whenever the Court of Judicial Review encountered a difficult poisoning case, Liu Lingfeng would arrive carrying a stack of files. Sometimes he would begin shouting before he even crossed the door. Manager Shen, today's body is extremely interesting. Every time he did, the waiting patients would turn pale. I had to remind him repeatedly that when he entered a medical clinic, he was not allowed to begin by enthusiastically discussing dead bodies. Before Xiao Yanci and I married, Madame Gu once came to the Shen family to beg for help. She knelt before mother's courtyard and asked the Shen family to intervene so Gu Mingheng's exile sentence might be reduced. Mingheng was only deceived by Su Wanru for a time. He and Zhouning grew up together. Even if the engagement is gone, surely all those years of affection still mean something. Mother did not meet her. She sent back only one sentence. Jiang Ruwei and Su Wanru also shared 17 years as mother and daughter. But when a life has been taken, affection cannot erase responsibility. Gu Mingheng was still sent into exile in the northwest. On the road, he received one final letter from the Gu family. The Minister of Rights had resigned. The Gu family's second branch had lost its capital appointments. Madame Gu had sold part of the family's property just to preserve what remained of the clan. The letter also said that the court had found a list of expendable scapegoats in the second prince's residence. Gu Mingheng's name was first. The second prince had never intended to save him if the scheme was exposed. According to the original plan, once the Shen family was convicted, every charge involving the forged military records and transportation of forbidden medicines would have been pushed onto Gu Mingheng. He had believed he was using the second prince as a ladder toward greater power. From beginning to end, he had only been a scapegoat prepared in advance. The escorting officers later said that after reading the letter, Gu Mingheng sat outside in the snow for the entire night. The next day, he asked to see me. I did not go. Some forms of regret are only the resentment of a loser who has lost his advantages. They do not deserve forgiveness. On the day before Su Wanru's sentence was carried out, Mother sent her one old garment that Aunt Ruwei had left behind. Nanny Zhou had found it in an old chest. Several banknotes and an unfinished letter were hidden in the stitching. It was the money Aunt had quietly saved over the years so she could take her daughter south and begin again. A prison matron later told me that Su Wanru sat holding those banknotes for the entire night. At dawn she asked, "If my mother were still alive, would she forgive me?" The matron did not answer. Su Wanru did not truly need anyone else to answer. What she had done to her mother could not disappear because of tears that came too late. On the day her sentence was carried out, I did not go. Mother did not go either. Instead, we went to Aunt Ruwei's grave and placed a bouquet of her favorite white peonies there. That was our final farewell. On the day Xiao Yanqi and I married, there was no snow in the capital. The crabapple trees in Prince Su's residence were in full bloom. When the wind passed, petals scattered along the street. Xiao Yanqi personally stood before the Shen residence and bowed to my parents. I am not here to take Zhouning away from the Shen family. I am only here to bring her to another home that will also belong to her. Mother's eyes immediately reddened. Father kept his face stern and nodded, but when I turned away, I saw him quietly wipe at the corner of one eye. On the third day after the wedding, I went to Qingwei Medical Clinic as usual. Many people in the capital were waiting to see Prince Su's household become a laughingstock. Instead, Xiao Yanci arrived even earlier than I did. He sat in the rear courtyard with a stack of the prince's household medicine purchasing accounts in front of him. "Why are you here?" "The residence has been buying medicines at prices 30% above market rate." He pushed the accounts toward me. "My wife is excellent at auditing ledgers. I must trouble you." I looked at his perfectly serious face. "Are you using me as a free accountant?" "No." He pulled out a stack of property deeds. "Half the properties belonging to Prince Su's household are now yours. You are auditing your own accounts." For once, I had nothing to say. Liu Lingfeng poked his head in through the doorway. "Could the two of you stop dividing the family property for a moment? The court just received a poisoning case. I think Manager Shen will be very interested." I picked up my medical case and headed out. After 2 steps, I turned back toward Xiao Yanci. "Coming?" He closed his file and came with us. Later, Mother had the remaining silver setting from the shattered heart, illuminating jade polished, and gave it to me. The jade itself was completely gone. Only the empty silver frame remained. "Do you want another piece of jade set into it?" she asked. I shook my head. No, it already completed what it was meant to do. What had truly been repaired was never a jade pendant. It was Mother's hand, still warm in mine. Father's name, no longer buried beneath a false accusation. My brother's living figure riding away on horseback. Aunt Ruwei's life finally given justice. And a future in which I did not have to erase any part of myself in order to be chosen with certainty. The doors of Qingwei Medical Clinic slowly opened. Spring light, voices, and the scent of medicine entered together. Xiao Yanci stood below the stone steps and reached out his hand toward me. "No prison cart, no truth arriving too late." I walked over and took his hand. "Let's go." "Where?" "To investigate the case, and after that?" "Home," he smiled. All right, the road of this life was still long. But every step belonged to my own choice. End of the main story. Extra chapter: The Here is waiting at the clinic again. Half a year after Xiao Yanci and I married, an extremely ridiculous rumor began circulating through the capital. According to the rumor, Prince Su's heir was physically weak and visited Qingwei Medical Clinic every few days. Some said that after years of working cases at the Court of Judicial Review, he had exhausted himself so badly that he now needed his wife to check his pulse every day. Others said he had been secretly poisoned. Though he looked tall and strong, he supposedly had very little time left and survived only because I sustained him with some mysterious Zhang family medicine. The most outrageous version was one Liu Lingfeng heard in a tea house. It claimed Xiao Yanci had long ago been poisoned to the heart. Whenever the moon was full, his whole body supposedly turned icy cold and his eyes blood red, and only a fantastical remedy involving his wife's heart's blood could bring him back to his senses. When Liu Lingfeng retold the rumor to me with great enthusiasm, I was sorting a new shipment of astragalus in the pharmacy. At the words "her own blood," the sieve almost slipped from my hands. Why don't they simply say I'm a monster? Some people do. Liu Lingfeng helped himself to a handful of osmanthus candy from the table and ate it without the slightest embarrassment. But the man who called you a monster had his own wife drag him here by the ear to apologize the next day. Why? Because you cured his wife's chronic cold condition. I nodded. It seems Qingwei Medical Clinic's medical skill is useful after all. Still chewing candy, Liu Lingfeng continued. People are even placing bets now. They were betting on whether the hair would survive the coming winter. I slowly set down the medicine sieve. Who started the betting pool? No idea. Did you bet? Liu Lingfeng stopped chewing. His eyes drifted toward the window. As a coroner of the Court of Judicial Review, how could I possibly participate in something so ridiculous? How much? 10 taels. What did you bet on? That he'll live to 100. Liu Lingfeng immediately added, I am completely loyal to the hair. I held out my hand without expression. Half. Why? Without me, how is he supposed to live to 100? Liu Lingfeng thought about that. Fair point. Deal. We were seriously discussing how to divide gambling winnings we had not even received when the courtyard outside suddenly became quiet. The patients, who had been chatting while waiting for treatment, all fell silent. Several apprentices immediately lowered their heads and became extremely busy organizing medicine cabinets. I did not need to look up to know who had arrived. Xiao Yanci stood at the doorway in his court uniform. He had clearly just finished handling a case. There was still a little cinnabar seal ink on his sleeve. His gaze first fell on the osmanthus candy in Liu Lingfeng's hand. Then it moved to the betting slip spread between us. What are you doing? Liu Lingfeng had spent years working around crime scenes and dead bodies, so his ability to remain calm in a crisis was far better than an ordinary person's. He immediately stuffed the slip into his mouth. Nothing. Just hungry. Xiao Yanxi watched him struggle to chew paper. Has Qingwei Medical Clinic become so poor it cannot even provide food? I explained sincerely. He may be deficient in the wood element. Eating a little paper might replenish it. Liu Lingfeng glared at me. Xiao Yanxi clearly did not believe either of us, but he seemed unwilling to pursue the matter today. He walked directly to me and placed his right hand on the small pulse pillow. Check my pulse. I looked at his perfectly healthy complexion. What's wrong? Headache. When did it begin? An hour ago. Were you injured? No. How long did you sleep last night? 8 hours, I frowned. You stayed up reading case files again? I checked his pulse. It was steady. Aside from mild fatigue, there was nothing wrong with him. Go home and sleep. Shall not move his hand. My chest also feels uncomfortable. I checked the other wrist. Still normal. Any palpitations? A little. When? He glanced at Liu Lingfeng. Just now. Liu Lingfeng looked completely confused. I followed Xiao Yanxi's gaze and saw that Liu Lingfeng was still holding the osmanthus candy I had given him. At last I understood. You didn't come here because you're sick. I am a patient. You are not sick. I have a headache, chest discomfort, and palpitations, he replied with perfect seriousness. I lowered my voice. That is called jealousy. Several young apprentices nearby immediately pricked up their ears. Xiao Yanxi said calmly. The medical texts of Great Sheng contain no such diagnosis. Then go home and search the medical texts yourself. A physician cannot refuse a patient. He looked entirely righteous. I stared at him for a moment. Ever since our marriage, he had come to the clinic every few days claiming some new problem, sometimes dizziness, sometimes an aching hand. The most ridiculous occasion was when he told me his right eyelid had been twitching all morning, and he suspected some rare toxic illness. I examined him for ages before discovering that Liu Lingfeng had been standing opposite him, teasing his eye with a feather. As for today's so-called palpitations, they had almost certainly skipped the instant he walked in and saw Liu Lingfeng sitting beside me eating candy. Xiao Yanxi, do you have nothing to do? The court closed its case today. So you came here to interfere with my patients? I waited my turn. He pulled a wooden number token from his sleeve. 27. Qinghui Medical Clinic saw patients according to numbered tokens each day. He had genuinely taken a number and waited. An elderly man outside leaned his head around the door. Dr. Shen, how much longer for number 28? Almost there. I smiled apologetically at him, then turned back and glared at Xiao Yanxi. There are other patients waiting. Then prescribe something. You aren't sick. What am I supposed to prescribe? Something calming. I wrote out an ordinary calming prescription, and then at the end, added one absurd extra item. 5 gin of vinegar. Xiao Yanxi read it. His brows moved slightly. What does the final ingredient treat? Using one problem to counter another. Suppressed laughter came from outside. The elderly man who had waited so long held the doorframe, laughing until his beard shook. Without changing expression, Xiao Yanxi folded the prescription. Thank you, doctor. Remember to pay the consultation fee at the counter. Even between husband and wife? Naturally. How much? 100 taels. The other patients pay 10 copper coins. You occupied more time. He nodded. Reasonable. Half an hour later, the Prince Su household's accountant actually delivered a 100 tael banknote. Along with it came 5 whole carts of aged vinegar. 5 carts. The servant standing outside the clinic announced loudly. His Highness said not a single ingredient Dr. Shen prescribed may be omitted. Everyone on the street turned to look at us. Standing before 5 carts of vinegar, I considered closing the clinic for the first time in my life. Liu Lingfeng covered his nose. That smell is overwhelming. This was your idea. Wrongfully accused. He raised a hand in protest. The here has always been frighteningly efficient. This has nothing to do with me. In the end, Mother distributed the 5 carts of vinegar among pharmacies and eateries throughout the capital. Qingwei Medical Clinic smelled sour for an entire month. From then on, the rumor that Xiao Yanxi was dying from some mysterious poison disappeared completely. A new rumor replaced it. Prince Su's heir was terribly jealous. And apparently the condition was severe. After that day, I established 3 rules with Xiao Yanxi. First, he was not allowed to take a patient number unless he was actually ill. Second, he was not allowed to create scenes of jealousy inside the clinic. Third, he was not allowed to interfere with other patients. He agreed to all 3. The next morning, as soon as Qinghui Medical Clinic opened, I saw a tall man in gray wearing a broad hat sitting on the waiting bench. The brim was pulled extremely low, hiding most of his face. I walked over. Xiao Yanxi. The man lowered his voice. Young lady, you have mistaken me for someone else. Take off the hat. Inconvenient. Then give me your hand. After a moment of hesitation, he placed his hand on the pulse cushion. One touch was enough. Your Highness, what is wrong today? He lowered his voice further. I'm not here to see a doctor. Then why are you here? Waiting for someone. Who? He looked up at me. Waiting for Dr. Shen to finish work. I had no answer. Technically, that did not violate any of the 3 rules. He was not seeking treatment. He was not openly complaining of jealousy. He simply sat in the waiting area like an immovable Buddha statue. Unfortunately, every young man who entered to see me first had to endure his silent inspection from head to toe. By noon, the number of young male patients had dropped noticeably. The number of elderly men over 70 had increased. That afternoon, a young gentleman in white entered the clinic. He was around 20 and had a refined appearance. In his hands was a fresh bouquet of peonies. Dr. Shen, I am Lu Wenzhou. Last month you treated my mother. I came today especially to thank you. He held the flowers toward me. My mother grew these herself. They are not valuable. I hope you will accept them. I was about to take them when another hand reached over. Xiao Yan accepted the bouquet for me. Your goodwill is received. Lu Wenzhou looked at him in confusion. And you are a clinic assistant? Yes, Xiao Yan answered. I nearly choked on my tea. Lu Wenzhou looked at the sword at Xiao Yan's waist, clearly worth a fortune, then at a face that obviously did not belong to an ordinary servant. Qinggui Medical Clinic seems to have unusually high requirements for assistants. Very high, Xiao Yan said blandly. Lu Wenzhou still did not leave. Dr. Shen, I wonder if you are free today. My mother would like to invite you to our residence for a meal. No, Xiao Yan answered. Lu Wenzhou looked directly at me. I was asking Dr. Shen. I had just opened my mouth when Xiao Yan suddenly began coughing dramatically. He braced one hand on the table, his face pale and his body swaying. What's wrong? I instinctively supported him. He leaned against my shoulder. My old ailment is acting up. Since when have you had an old ailment? Since yesterday. I clenched my teeth. Seeing the situation, Lu Wenzhou politely took his leave. Since Dr. Shen has an ill family member to care for, I will return another day. The moment he was gone, Xiao Yanzi stood perfectly straight. His face was healthy. His breathing was steady. I folded my arms. The old illness? Recovered. Xiao Yanzi, how old are you this year? 26. You look 6, he corrected me seriously. A 6-year-old cannot solve court cases. A 6-year-old also cannot pretend to be ill and deceive a physician. I didn't deceive anyone. What exactly was wrong with you? When I saw him give you flowers, my chest felt uncomfortable. I drew a slow breath. That is not an illness. Then what is it called? Being petty. Xiao Yanqi frowned. Can it be treated? No. Then it isn't my fault. Somehow, he had reasoned his way into innocence. I turned and went back toward the pharmacy. He followed. What are you going to do with Lu Wenzhou's flowers? Put them in a vase. Flowers are not suitable for a pharmacy. Then I'll put them in my room. Not suitable there either. Why? They attract insects. I stopped and turned around. Xiao Yanzi, can you simply say you don't like them? No, why not? That would make me sound insufficiently broad-minded. I stared at him. He stared back. A moment later, we both laughed. In the end, Lu Wenzhou's bouquet was placed in Xiao Yanzi's study. He saw it every day while reviewing case files. According to a young servant from Prince Su's residence, the flowers stayed fresh for 5 days, and Xiao Yanzi looked at them for 5 days. When they finally withered, he personally gathered the petals and sent them to Qinggui Medical Clinic. They can be used medicinally, he said with complete seriousness. Don't waste them. I strongly suspected he simply wanted to make sure the flowers Lu Wenzhou had given me were thoroughly dead. In autumn, Huaijin returned from the northern frontier to report to the court. The moment he entered the house, he heard about Xianxi pretending to be ill at the clinic. At that evening's family dinner, he laughed so hard he nearly fell from his chair. The dignified deputy minister of the Court of Judicial Review actually pretended to be sick, just to drive away a young man who brought my sister flowers. Xiao Yanqi, so this day has finally come for you. Xiao Yanqi calmly drank his tea. General Shen seems very pleased. Of course. Huaijin patted my shoulder. Zhaoning has always been popular. When she was little, a young boy from the neighboring family once tried to climb the wall just to bring her candy and fell, breaking his leg. Xiao Yanqi set down his teacup. Which family? Huaijin froze. That was more than 10 years ago. How would I remember? Which street did he live on? Somewhere in the east of the city, I think. His surname? Huaijin finally realized something was wrong. Why are you asking all this? Investigating a case. A boy climbing a wall to deliver candy more than 10 years ago is under the court's jurisdiction? Altied entry into the Marquis Manor can indeed be investigated. I tapped my chopsticks against my bowl. Eat. Both men fell silent immediately. Father sat at the head of the table, looking extremely satisfied. In the past, he had been the only person in the family capable of making everyone quiet with one word. Now, apparently, there were two of us. After dinner, Huaijin mysteriously pulled me aside. Jiaoning, Xiao Yan is far too jealous. You need to be careful. He's only childish occasionally. You call that occasional? My brother handed me a wooden box. Your brother prepared something for self-defense. I opened it. Inside was a rolling pin about as long as an arm. Why are you giving me this? If he ever treats you badly, at least you'll have something to defend yourself with. I frowned. Brother, I don't think a rolling pin would do much against him. Huaijin started to suggest another questionable idea. I was about to answer when Xiao Yan's voice came from behind us. General Shen. Huaijin stiffened. Xiao Yan stood beneath the corridor, his gaze settling on the rolling pin. Are you conspiring against a court official? Family business, Huaijin said righteously. The deputy minister has no authority here. Xiao Yan nodded. Reasonable. He took the rolling pin, weighed it in one hand, and said only, too light. The next day, Prince Su's residence delivered an iron rolling pin weighing a full 30 jin. A note came with it. For self-defense, the tool should at least be practical. Huaijin held the iron object in silence for a long time. Finally, he asked me, is he mocking me? No, I think he's completely serious. That's worse. Father, however, liked the ridiculous iron rolling pin very much. He took it to the military camp and had it repurposed as a tool for training arm strength. The soldiers at the northern camp began taking turns lifting it 50 times a day. 3 months later, their close quarters fighting ability had reportedly improved noticeably. When word reached the emperor, he was delighted and ordered the Ministry of War to promote the exercise. From then on, the Great Sheng Army had a new drill known as the Iron Rod Drill. From then on, Huaijin's expression became complicated whenever he saw soldiers lifting the iron rods. He had probably never imagined that the rolling pin, meant to protect his sister from her husband, would become a military strength training tool. After winter began, Mother started quietly worrying about whether I would have children. She did not ask directly. Instead, she sent a different nourishing food to the residents every day. The first day was red dates. The second day was bird's nest. The third day was a very energetic old hen. On the fourth day, Qingwei Medical Clinic received an entire cart of walnuts. I stood before the mountain of walnuts, lost in thought. What exactly does Mother think she is strengthening? Qingdai laughed softly. Madam said nourishing the body takes a whole cart. Perhaps she wants to make sure you are thoroughly fortified. Worse still, after Princess Consort Su's name was cleared, Prince Su himself began taking an interest in whether his son would have an heir. He did not feel comfortable asking me directly, so he asked his son instead. When Xiao Yanqi returned that day, his expression was unusually serious. Father asked me a question. What question? He asked why, when we have been married nearly a year, we still do not have a child. I nearly choked on my tea. What did you say? I said such things should happen naturally. And then, he gave me a book. Xiao Yanqi took a blue-covered booklet from his sleeve. The title was Secrets to Many Children and Great Blessings. I nearly sprayed out my tea. He opened it, revealing many small figures drawn in odd poses. We stared at each other in silence. Then he closed it. The artwork is poor. That is what you think the problem is? The content is not very rigorous either. You actually studied it? Only 2 pages. I snatched the booklet from him and threw it into the stove. The flames caught. Xiao Yanqi did not stop me. He merely looked faintly regretful. Burning it is probably for the best. Why? If Liu Lingfeng saw it, he would laugh for a year. As if summoned by the mention of his name, Liu Lingfeng's voice came through the window. What book? His head appeared at the opening. I quickly used the fire tongs to push the remaining pages deeper into the stove. A medical book, I said. Medical books are my favorite, Liu Lingfeng replied. He climbed in through the window and reached toward the stove to retrieve what remained of the book. Xiao Yanqi kicked the stool aside before he could reach the stove. Liu Lingfeng tumbled to the floor and looked deeply aggrieved. You two are definitely hiding something from me. No, we answered at the same time. He became even more certain. Definitely something. To distract him, I grabbed a handful of walnuts from the table and held them out. Want some? Liu Lingfeng accepted them. Why do you have so many? Brain food. Who needs brain food? Xiao Yanqi and I looked at him at the same time. Liu Lingfeng left angrily with the walnuts. The world was finally quiet again. I looked at the piles of nourishing foods outside and sighed. Tomorrow, I'm going back to the Marquis Manor. For what? To tell Mother that indiscriminate supplementation is one of the things physicians warn against most. Xiao Yanqi nodded. And Father? You tell him. Why me? He gave the book to you. Xiao Yanqi was silent for a moment. I think my mother-in-law is more difficult to deal with. So we could leave the capital to investigate a case. Where is there a case? At present, there isn't one. He spoke with complete seriousness. But we can wait. As it turned out, we did not have to wait long. 3 days later, an urgent letter arrived from Jiangnan. A branch of Jishi Hall had discovered a case involving counterfeit medicine and needed me to handle it personally. I held the letter and felt as though heaven itself had come to rescue me. Pack, we leave today. Xiao Yanci asked. You're not going to say goodbye to our parents? I'll write them. Would that seem unfilial? Staying here until we finish all those walnuts would be far more foolish. That afternoon, we boarded a carriage heading south. As the carriage left the capital, I lifted the curtain. At the city gate, a cart sent by Mother had just met another cart of supplements sent by Prince Su. One cart carried ginseng, the other carried deer antler. The two groups of stewards were already arguing over whose household had sent the better tonics. I dropped the curtain immediately. Go faster. The driver urged the horses onward. Xiao Yanci sat across from me, barely suppressing a smile. So there are people even Dr. Shen is afraid of. I'm not afraid. It's respect for one's elders. Then why are we running away? This is called a strategic withdrawal. The carriage gradually left the capital behind. Only then did I finally relax. Xiao Yanci reached into a hidden compartment and took out a packet of osmanthus candy. Want some? Where did you get that? From Liu Lingfeng's table. You stole his. He ate yours first. I took one. Xiao Yanci, Are you still jealous? No. Then, what do you call this? Confiscated evidence. I laughed until I leaned against the carriage wall. Outside, the sunlight was warm. The sound of hoofbeats was light. The road ahead was long. When I first began this second life, I thought happiness had to be something earth-shattering. Only later did I understand that what truly gave me peace was precisely these small, noisy, ordinary days. Mother's endless supply of tonics, Huijin's ridiculous iron rolling pin, which somehow ended up as military training equipment, Liu Lingfeng's seemingly endless supply of candy, and Xiao Yanci being clearly jealous while still insisting that he was merely investigating a case. I offered him a piece of osmanthus candy. Lord Xiao, open your mouth. He leaned down and ate it. Sweet? Passable, he said. Then, with the same calm seriousness, he added, it tastes sweeter when you feed it to me. I stared at him for a moment, then reached over and pinched his cheek. Where did you learn to say things like that? From the booklet Father gave me. My grip immediately tightened. Didn't you say you only read 2 pages? It was on the 2nd page. Stop the carriage, I shouted toward the driver. Xiao Yanci finally laughed out loud. The carriage continued south. Our laughter drifted far away on the east wind. As for when we would return to the capital, at the very least, not until those 2 carts of ginseng and deer antler had been given to someone else. End of extra chapter.